name.
Free baseball.
7 innings or more. 2-2 pitch. Swing and a miss. Got him on the slider. 2-2. Swing and a miss. 89. That was a slider upstairs.
Flame.
Hammer. Blast off. Left field. Number 1. Here it comes. Julio Rodriguez with a mash of a 3-run bomb. And the 22 at first. 1 down. And the 3-1 swing and a miss. Charged down to a knee with the force of that swing. And it is 3-2.
Drill deep to left field. There it goes. See ya. A long home run. Ties this game at 1.
So, should we bring in the closer?
I
And
think it'd be a good time for that.
all right, cool. So we've got an interesting guy today.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode number 47 of the Free Baseball Podcast. It's not just me and Jake this time. Got some special guests, of course. If you're a Free Baseball legend and you've watched all of our shows, Isaiah Hansen has been here several times. Writer for Athletes Hub, Yankees fan. You can see the stadium in the back.
Yankees
and then,
yeah.
and then our boss, Devin Withers, also been here a few times. Ready to join us to talk one of our articles that we wrote and together posted the last week. Talk some baseball and just have a good time. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah.
But just like always, it is the off season, so there's some transactions to talk about. Not as many as there have been in the past few weeks, but we can go ahead and get started with those two. A lot of raise in this one. They extended star closer Pete Fairbanks 3 years, $11 million, the $7 million club option for 2026. Got a $1 million buyout in there as well, which is going to buy out his first season of free agency. Incentives plus an option in the deal also could push the deal to $24.6 million over 4 years. Fairbanks is one of those big reclamation guys that they just kind of have turned into an absolute freak out of their bullpen. He's so good. I'll turn it over to you two because you are fans of the New York Yankees who are usually being victimized by one Pete Fairbanks. So let's hear what you have to think about this one first.
Yeah, I mean, staying as unbiased as I can possibly be as a Yankees fan. I'm going to try to contain myself this time around, but I've actually been impressed with Fairbanks. Listen, he missed, I think, the first 3.5 months or so last season with a torn lat muscle, and then came back and finished the year with, I think it was 22 scoreless innings, had 36 strikeouts. So had a great turnaround for, that latter part of the year. But so as a Yankees fan, definitely worries me a little bit. The Rays have been a little bit active, but I know we'll be talking a little bit later on postseason teams that made it last year that I don't think are going to make it this year, and the Rays are obviously going to be my choice, not to foreshadow anything. But yeah, Fairbanks, a great signing for the Rays, and hopefully has, an improved 2023 season.
Yeah. I mean, the Rays have 3 pitchers, 1 starter and 2 others that I just looked at as like Slender Man, because every time I seen them come out, I'm like, oh God. Like, it was, of course, Pete Fairbanks, Tyler Glasnow, and Nick Anderson. I believe Nick Anderson's gone, but he was also killing us for a good period. So I'm happy for him. He's definitely well deserved, especially after he missed at least, I don't know if it was the full season in last year, right? I know he missed a lot of time.
Yeah, it was like 3 months.
Yeah, the fact that he was able to bounce back and get paid, I mean, hey, he deserved it, and the Rays, you have to keep a guy like that. So.
Great points. I don't know if there's too much more to say about some random reliever, but cool to see him get his money, especially on a team that usually doesn't give out a lot of money. So great for Pete. I think this is a great signing. He was really dominant, like Devin mentioned, at the end of last year. So definitely keeps that core together in Tampa Bay. And yeah, I really don't think this is too much of like a newsbreaker, especially because it just buys out 1 year of his free agency. And I don't think he was going to be anybody's closer target heading into his age like 30 season. But yeah, it'll be nice to see him wearing the whatever colors the Rays are. Green.
Yeah, the list of relievers in Major League Baseball last year who had a K percent over 30%, walk rate below 10%, and an ERA and FIP both below 1.5 is Edwin Diaz and Pete Fairbanks. So pretty elite company there for Mr. Fairbanks, the guy with the big bulging eyes, weird freak show reliever. But another guy the Rays have extended is stud corner infielder Yandy Diaz, 3 years, $24 million this time. Also going to buy out his first season of free agency. So the Rays doing a little bit of smart spending there. It's got a club option for 2026, which would buy out his second season of free agency. Obviously, Yandy Diaz has been a big part of their offense. Really underrated player to talk about. So what are your thoughts, guys, on Yandy before we move on again?
Just another guy. No, I'm joking. He's a solid player for a solid team, and this is the type of moves that they always do. So I don't really have much to say other than he deserves it. And I mean, we'll see what he does in the following year. I think he's projected, just a minimal type of player, but he could possibly do more. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I forget what the actual trade was, but correct me if I'm wrong. He was acquired, I think it was like a 3-team trade way back in 2018.
He was on the Guardians.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, he was on Guardians before this. And, if you're going to keep up in the AL East, you got to have some offense. If you're going to keep up the likes of the Yankees and the Blue Jays, even the Red Sox, the Orioles. I mean, it's anybody's division to win in theory, but last season ended up hitting 296. So obviously he's making a lot of contact, 9 homers with 57 RBIs as well. So he's definitely been a useful part for the Tampa Bay Rays on the offensive end. And, as a Yankees fan, it's hard to, approve of some of these moves because you want the easy division win. But, I mean, the Rays are going to make it tough on the rest of the division.
Well, I just want to say one thing. It allows the Rays to retire G-Man Choi's number. Finally have his replacement in Yandy Diaz for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. He was part of the Jake Bowers, Cole Sulcer trade.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah.
Absolute stars given up for Yandy Diaz. Jake
Not too
Bowers.
earth-shattering.
I don't think Jake Bowers might even be in baseball anymore.
He definitely is. He just didn't live up
good.
to whatever potential he had. No.
Yeah, not in the
It's
slightest.
pretty crazy though that the Rays were able to turn Yandy into what he has been, because he was always a guy with a lot of potential. Most of the potential was in his biceps, which hard to disagree with that. He is very strong. But yeah, they got him to hit the ball in the air a little bit, and he sort of morphed into actually a really impressive hitter. And it mostly stems from his plate discipline. Last year, he walked almost 4% more than he struck out, which is really crazy. And he was worth almost 4 FWAR as a guy who's not really great defensively. He was really good offensively at a 146 WRC plus. And since coming to the Rays in 2019, he's good for a 127 WRC plus across 384 games. So he's actually become a really good hitter, which is impressive. It is sort of weird to see them buy out possibly 2 years of his free agency when in those years, I think he's going to be like 32 and 33, which actually 33 and 34, which doesn't seem like something the Rays would do. So I really don't see them exercising that club option in 2026. But, I'm glad Yandy got his money, and it's pretty crazy to see that he's come from, just a guy with big muscles to a guy that's actually a more than competent hitter.
Oh, yeah. Yandy Diaz is a hitter that I know me and Jake both really like, just because he's a guy that performs a feat that is not often seen in today's Major League Baseball, which is he walks more than he strikes out. If you look at his Baseball Savant page, you just see a bunch of red numbers because all he does is hit the ball hard. He just doesn't hit it in the air. If you ever have seen a picture of Yandy Diaz, you'd really have to be hard pressed to see how he's hit less than I think he has less than 50, and it might even be less than 40 career home runs because he is absolutely gigantic.
Yeah, 39.
Yeah, 39 career home runs for a dude with biceps like that is wild.
Just not flexible enough to get under the
must not be. But Yandy's a good hitter, and he's part of an offense that really kind of needed to keep as much offense as they possibly can. So I guess locking him down the next few years to go along with Wander Franco is something that they needed to do. So, I mean, I like this move for them, but it is still kind of weird given the age concerns, like Jake said. Moving on, another extension, big spenders, the Mets. At it again. They've extended Jeff McNeil 4 years, $50 million. Me and Jake talk about Jeff McNeil all the time because he's like the biggest product of the 2019 juice ball. Guy has no pop in his bat, but he's got 4 years, $50 million. He's got a $13.75 million club option in 2027. And this is going to buy out the first 3 seasons of free agency for McNeil, who, how old is McNeil, Jake? He's got to be in
31 next year.
I thought so. I was like, he's late 20s, early 30s, but he's got good bat to ball skills. McNeil, I think this is a good move for the Mets. They keep a guy that's sort of a linchpin in their offense that gives them something different because a lot of their offense is big, like home run power, banking on guys like Pete Alonso to hit a lot of home runs, and McNeil is the antithesis of that. So what are your thoughts here, guys?
Yeah, I mean, so I looked into this one before the show too, and I'm gonna absolutely butcher this guy's name, but I saw that it was the first time in franchise history that someone's waived multiple arbitration deals in order to get an extension for the Mets, at least first time in franchise history since Juan Lagares.
That's right.
Did I butcher it? Did I get it?
No, yeah, you got
it.
That was in 2015. So Jeff McNeil knew that he wanted to stay in New York. He waived the deals multiple times, got the extension, 4 years, $50 million. And this is a guy that led the majors with a 326 batting average, and that was across almost 600 plate appearances. So I thought that was a great signing for the Mets, and I thought it was actually for a very good deal. Regardless of what we say about the juice baseball, I still thought it was a great signing.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like you said, he still has that good bat to ball skills. I mean, his batting average, I know it's an old fashioned stat, but it shows at least a little bit there. And he also played a little bit of outfield. He was playing left field for a period and second base. So the fact that he's going to give you that flexibility and that contrast to guys like Pete Alonso, 4 years, $50 million, and the way contracts are being thrown out, that's fine. That's like a good deal for him and for the team. So makes sense.
Definitely. McNeil is clearly one of the best contact hitters in all of baseball. And even after a down year in 2021, it was nice to see him bounce back. He doesn't strike out at all, 10.4% last year. And like Devin said, led the majors in batting average. He also had a 143 WRC plus, so he was definitely way better than league average, which is pretty impressive. Isaiah hit the nail on the head by saying that he provides a lot defensively, and not just by being a good defender, but also being able to play all over the field. So it allows flexibility for the Mets. I think it's a great signing, even though it's going to be during McNeil's early to mid 30s. I think that's fine. I think this is a guy you don't really want to leave because he can play anywhere. It's like if you lose some guy at third base, he can play third base. If you lose an outfielder, he can play outfield. And you're always like, his skill set is going to play. He's not a guy that relies on athleticism or speed or power. It's just bat to ball skills. Like not to compare him to Tony Gwynn or Rod Carew, but he's very Rod Carew-esque. He's like the modern day Rod Carew, even though I wouldn't say he's definitely not as good as a Hall of Famer, and he's not as well known as Rod Carew or charismatic, but definitely Jeff McNeil is a great keep for the Mets.
Yeah, they locked up a batting champion for a relatively team-friendly deal. You're also looking at getting a player that's just coming off of the back of almost a 6-WAR season. That's got to be one of the most quiet virtual 6-WAR seasons that I've ever seen. He's obviously got excellent bat to ball skills. Jake talked about he only struck out about 10% of the time. He walks about 7% of the time. So you're getting a lot from McNeil. And I just, with all the big money that's been thrown around, especially with the Mets, for them to get a guy like this that's very positionally versatile, puts the ball in play, and just kind of keeps their offense moving along. This is like a home run for them, although that's not really something Jeff McNeil's familiar with. And someone last season that may or may not have been familiar with giving up home runs, Zach Greinke, who is re-signed by Kansas City Royals to fill out their rotation of guys that play baseball. Details are not quite finalized yet. Not really a whole lot known about the deal other than that he is going to go back to the Royals. It's 1 year. There's been reports for like 8 to 10 million. It's kind of weird. There's a bunch of incentives laid in there, but we don't know the amount. It's probably a lot because I really have to think that they had to give him a pretty good reason to want to come back and play baseball. Zach Greinke didn't have the best season last year, but he is very old and just kind of doesn't strike anybody out anymore. But Greinke is one of the legends of the game and is probably one of the most active, like one of the active players that has a better chance of being a Hall of Famer when all things are said and done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I predicted last year that he would go to Kansas City. He did. This year, he didn't make the top 10 for my free agent predictions just because, he fell off. But I think maybe, yeah. I mean, I would have figured that last year would have been his final season. You go back to Kansas City and close out your career. But all right, let's give it another shot, I guess. Why not? So he plays baseball, like David said. So it's fine for Kansas City.
Yeah, it's so season number 20, and he began his career in Kansas City, first round pick in the 2002 amateur draft. And the stat that really stood out to me, first among active pitchers, 514 career starts, 3,247 innings pitched in his career. I mean, the expectations got to be low for season number 20, but I mean, Davis put it best. Legend of the game. Wouldn't surprise me if he had some votes on that Hall of Fame ballot someday. But yeah, like I said, expectations are low, but you love to see that he's back here for season number 20.
Yeah, pretty crazy to see him still kicking. Definitely going to be a Hall of Famer. I'm excited to see his Hall of Fame speech. It's going to be unenthusiastic to say the least. He's an awkward guy. Did you guys remember him being better in Houston? He had a 4 ERA in both of his seasons there.
Last year he had a 4 ERA. Like it was
last
almost
year he had
5.
a
It was like
3.68 ERA.
I believe he was big in playoff games. Maybe that's what we remember.
Yeah,
maybe.
But, yeah.
All right. Here's a fun.
He also got to
Go
not
ahead.
play in. He also got to not play in Houston with the Crawford boxes and instead play in Kaufman, which is a cavern. So that probably helped a little bit.
Yeah.
I think his FIPS were close, if not nearly identical.
Yeah, no, actually, I think he was better in Houston in that department in XFIP. But what's really changed throughout his career is his strikeout numbers. Last year, he really just struck out absolutely nobody, which I feel like he's trying to prove a point at this time, because this was the type of guy in spring training that would go out and say, you don't need velocity to get batters out. And then he would throw like 83 miles an hour and just get everybody out in spring training and then be like, see, and everybody's like worried, like, oh, his velo's down. He's like, no, I'm just playing games. But last year he struck out 12.5% of batters, which is absolutely insanely low. Does anybody want to guess what his strikeout season high was last year?
Oh God.
In a game?
Yeah.
Let's go 4.
5.
Yeah, I was going to say like 6 maybe.
It was 5. How many times do you think he did that in 26 starts?
Once.
Let's give him 2 times.
Yeah, I'll say like 4.
He did it
That's
5
nice.
times. He struck out 5 batters, which was the most that he did in any start, and he did that 5 times. He rounded out the year with 6 straight starts of 3 strikeouts or less. It's just insane. You just do not see that at all in regular baseball, but especially in this day and age of increased strikeouts, it's absolutely insane to see a pitcher like this do the exact opposite of what everybody else is doing to find their success. So I love what Zach Greinke's doing right now. It just seems like he's trying to prove a point that you don't need to strike anybody out to be good, and he's proven everybody wrong. And it's pretty cool. He's definitely a character, and if this is his last season, I hope it's a successful one as he rides off into the sunset and towards the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Zach Greinke, I'm so thrilled that he's playing again. And I honestly, he feels like a player that could just play for as long as he realistically wants, because I really do feel like the whole not striking anybody out is just because he's bored and he wants to see what he can do without doing that.
Exactly.
He doesn't strike anybody out. He also refuses to walk anybody and has done so for quite a while now. And if you've watched Zach Greinke, older Zach Greinke pitch, it's quite a spectacle because he's a big fan of just throwing random ephus pitches. Like, I think I saw an overlay from, I think it was Pitching Ninja, where it was like his fastest career pitch, which was like 100.4, and his fastest strike and his slowest career strike is like 50. And it was I think it was a swinging strike. It wasn't even a called strike. Greinke's he's just a goofy guy, weird personality in all of baseball that is going to be a Hall of Famer when all things are said and done. He's a fun watch, really fun watch to get out there on bump.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say, did I dream this? I believe Wasn't he the one that like it might have been during a spring training game where he told the batter like what he was gonna throw?
He's done that several times in regular
Yeah.
season games.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
He called. I don't remember who it was, but it was when he was with the Astros. He called out exactly what he was going to throw, and he'd throw it, and he struck the guy out.
No, but then there's also the one where he was like doing signs with the catcher, and
Yeah.
he was doing the signs, and then he gave up a dinger.
Dude, that's Larry Bird saying, "Look, I'm gonna
He
go
probably
over
liked
here,
that,
I'm gonna
though.
shoot it here." Like that's
He probably got some sick amount of enjoyment out of that.
Yeah.
If you haven't also seen some of the speeches that Zach Greinke's given on like Chipotle,
He's a
you
weird
should
guy.
check those out. He's a cool
He
guy.
loved Chipotle.
He likes Chipotle. He doesn't like their price of guacamole. He said it's ridiculous. You have to pay more for
Bro,
guacamole.
you're a freaking 100 millionaire. Relax.
Yeah, he said that they raised the price though, so now he doesn't get it all the time like he used to.
I think he can afford it.
He can. It's the principle of the thing. You don't get it. That's exactly what he was talking about. On to the next move before I talk about Zach Greinke for the entire podcast. The Red Sox traded Matt Barnes in exchange for Richard Blyer from the Marlins and also cash considerations. Everyone's favorite player. Marlins received $5.5 million dues in this deal and big old reliever swap deal that doesn't happen very often. But I think this is more of a win-win for both sides.
yeah.
You think so? It's
I
weird
like
to
Blyer.
see.
It was.
I like Blyer.
Yeah, Blyer's the boy. I don't know why the Marlins would do that because Matt Barnes
Yeah,
seems to be
Matt
on
Barnes
the
is
downturn
good.
in
It
his
made no
career.
Yeah.
Blyer is sick.
Yeah. The trade on Miami's behalf didn't really make sense to me because I'm sort of going into the season. Maybe you guys know the answer because I don't. Like, who's the true? I get the Marlins don't win many games, but who's the true closer of the Miami Marlins in 2023? Because Tanner Scott had 20 saves, Dylan Floro had 10 saves, and then just 2 seasons ago, Matt Barnes was the true closer for the Red Sox. So it's like, is it just by committee? Or are they going to rely on a certain guy? So I'm interested to see how Miami is going to play this season out because it could just be by the hot hand.
They don't know what they're doing.
I
I don't
mean,
think
Also
there's.
have Sharp
They don't.
Let's put
Yeah, I think
get, like,
I think
3
the
second basemen and
yeah, I think the Red Sox said, "Hey, we'll give you $5 million," and like, yeah, take
That's it.
anybody. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, please, we
Run me my
love
money.
money. That's all they care about. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think Barnes is definitely a guy that has some upside. He's shown in the past that he could get a lot of strikeouts and some saves, but last year was really an up and down season of
Yeah.
struggles. He turned it around at the end of the year, which was cool to see, but it was definitely frustrating, especially for people that were trying to find the closer in Boston in terms of fantasy. But yeah, I don't know. They're both relatively old. Barnes is going to be 33. Blyer's going to be 36. But Blyer's a lot more interesting. He didn't Foolish Baseball make an entire video
Yes.
about him. Yeah, he just
It's an
doesn't
awesome
strike
video,
anybody
too.
out. He gets a lot of ground balls. He was sort of in the loop of clips out there on Twitter when he balked like 3 times in an inning last year and got super pissed. That was pretty crazy. But I think Blyer is a lot more interesting than Barnes. I wouldn't say he's necessarily better, but I think Barnes is more of a coin flip where Blyer is going to be pretty solid either way. Even if his arm falls off, he doesn't throw hard enough to make his arm fall off. But yeah, I really think the Marlins just saw the opportunity to save some money, which it's not like they've spent exorbitant amounts so far this year. So I don't really see why they need to save it, but maybe it'll be so that they can spend it towards extending Sandy. But yeah, it just seems like a cost saving thing for the Marlins and the Red Sox trying to get out from Matt Barnes while they still can.
It was a weird thing too for Matt Barnes. Like last season, 4.31 ERA across 44 games. But if you look closer, last 24 outings, Jake, you said it best. He improved as the season went on. The last 24 outings, 1.59 ERA. So he did clean it up by the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this is more or less a win-win move for both teams. Even though I particularly like Blyer more than Barnes. I think the whole point of this, and you mentioned it, Devin, like, you know, the kind of who is the closer for the Marlins. Is it Tanner Scott? Is it Dylan Floro? Is it going to be Matt Barnes? I think that they're just going to honestly play mix and match and figure out which one is going to work in the ninth and run with them. Barnes, I think they're gambling on the fact that he might bounce back and he could net them either a pretty big prospect at the trade deadline or they just have a closer for a couple years. On the other hand, Blyer is a steady hand. He's a middle reliever. You know what you're going to get. He doesn't strike anybody out. He gets a million ground balls. He is a sinker guy, lefty specialist, whatever you really want to call him. Like he just doesn't give up hard contact, doesn't walk anybody, doesn't strike anybody out. He's very steady in the middle of that rotation. So I think this is a win-win. If I were to bet on who's going to have a better season in this upcoming year, I would have to say Blyer. So I think the Red Sox probably come out a little ahead. But if this lottery ticket for the Marlins works out and Barnes is really good, they flip him for something really good at the deadline. So I think they got what they wanted here. Plus they got some money, which is always good because
sticking on the Marlins for just one more second. We got a comment from Michael Cunliffe that says he disagrees with us about Miami and says that they've made some underrated moves and that
I think so too.
They would be good if they weren't in the NL East, which I find it hard to agree with that. They've made some underrated moves if they were a team that was more complete in the first place. I think Gene Segura and Johnny Cueto and Luis Arias are really solid additions, but I don't think they're difference makers on a team that still seems really far away, especially offensively. I love their pitching rotation, but they took away from it by trading away Pablo Lopez. And I just don't think that offense has enough pop. Obviously, they have no shot in that NL East. That's one of the toughest divisions, maybe the toughest division in all of baseball. But I think even if you put them in the AL Central or the NL Central, they might still have trouble because I just don't know how far pitching can carry them. I've talked about it way early in the season before they even signed Gene Segura that they just seem like they're sitting on their hands, like they don't want to do much. And that does seem to be the case. I think if maybe Jazz Chisholm breaks out and obviously Ayo Garcia sort of bounces back from a terrible year and everybody in the rotation sort of pitches to their potential, then they could be a sneakily good team, but I don't see them being I don't see them competing for the wild card or anything.
I don't know, Jake. Have you seen Odd Year Avisail Garcia?
I did see that, and that's what made me say that.
Odd Year Avisail Garcia is like a perennial all-star. I kind of agree with Jake. The Marlins would be a better team if they weren't having to go up against the buzzsaw that is the NL East, but I still don't think that makes them like a very good team. They've made some good moves, but I don't think it's enough. It's like the rest of their roster, especially lineup-wise, is very just not good. It's very fine at best, is what I would say. You've got guys who you're banking on like Jazz Chisholm. They've got to get a lot out of Jorge Soler. Arias is very good, but you kind of see what the Twins thought of him. He's not like a needle mover necessarily, like offensively. He's not really one that you're going to completely build your offense around. He's a great hitter, but it's not like, here you go, Luis Arias, you're going to carry the freight on this offense. It's just not what it is. Same thing with Gene Segura. They've got a lot of good role player guys and not the stars to build around that really like would put it all together. So I think they're like a 500 baseball team, really, maybe a little better at best is what I would say for the Marlins.
Unfortunately, I wish they were better.
I wish they were better.
Players.
You root for them.
Yeah,
I love me some Sandy and I love me some Jazz.
I mean,
I do too.
They're top heavy for sure. They just don't have enough depth, I don't think. So
maybe maybe the ghost of Sixto Sanchez comes back and proceeds to exist again, and because I don't know what happened with him last year. It's like he was really good, and they're like, "Hey, remember that guy? I don't." And you just never heard about him again. So I don't know. They've got potential, but it's like, can they put it together? Because history right now is leaning on the side of no, the Marlins won't put it together. Moving on, though, let's talk about another AL East move. We talked about the Red Sox trading Matt Barnes. This time the Blue Jays signed former Yankee reliever Chad Green to a 1-year, $2.25 million deal. After 2023, the Jays have it's 3-year option worth $27 million with up to $1 million in incentives. If that gets declined, Green is going to have a player option that's worth $6.25 million with $2 million worth of incentives. And if that is declined, the Jays have a 2-year club option worth $21 million with $1 million worth of incentives. So it's a bunch of weird options in there for Chad Green, who is a bounce back candidate in their bullpen, who kind of needed a little bit of help in the middle of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm here in Yankee Stadium, and like I said, there's a lot of people that are, that want to wish him well because when he was healthy, he did very good for us. He was one of the best relievers. I don't want to say in baseball, but I kind of do at the same time. He was very consistent for us, and he was somebody you could depend on. Of course, he has been injured, and I do understand that kind of structure of a deal for a guy like Chad Green, because you could be getting one of the best relievers in baseball, or he could be nobody at this point. We don't know, and we got to see what he can deliver. So, but as a Yankee fan, I wish him the best. He did good for us. So.
Yeah, season-ending injury back in May. Still recovering from Tommy John surgery, from what it sounds like. Probably going to miss the early portion of the season. Not sure how long until he's fully recovered. But before the injury, flat 3 ERA across his 15 innings, and obviously wishing the best for him. I think that the way the deal is structured right now, it's a very low risk, high reward situation for the Toronto Blue Jays. So. Good move for them if it pans out, and worst comes to worst, hey, you protected yourself and you covered all your bases.
Yeah, he's got to come back strong from Tommy John surgery. I think that's the biggest thing up in the air right now. You can lose a lot of control and velocity, which is something Green relied on before the injury. So I hope he comes back strong, because he was really good in the last 5 years or so, and Tommy John surgery can really alter players' careers. But yeah, got it completely right by saying low risk for the Blue Jays. Like, they're only locked into like 3.25 million or something, actually, plus the player option. I think they're locked into like $4 million or so, which is really very low for a guy that could possibly be one of the best closers or relievers on their team. But he will be entering his mid-30s pretty shortly, so time could be running out. I don't know. We'll see. I think it'll be interesting to see if he contributes to this team in the second half.
I think the Blue.
Paid. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's all. I just want to see him get paid. That's all.
I think the Blue Jays have a really underrated bullpen at this point. You obviously have Romano at the back, Anthony Bass, Yimi Garcia, Simber's a good change of pace option. Now you add a guy like Chad Green into it as well. I think their bullpen is really underrated if everyone in it stays healthy, which is going to be the biggest thing. They have a lot of names in there, and it'll need to be trimmed down a little bit. Right now, I think MLB, like, their depth chart has like Romano, Tim Meza, Anthony Bass, Yimi Garcia, Adam Simber, Trevor Richards, Trent Thornton, Zach Pop, like a million names, Julian Fernandez, Drew Hutchison, Zach Thompson, Paul Fry. That's obviously going to need to be trimmed down. But Chad Green, I think at this point, like, you're guaranteed a roster spot. He's obviously a huge strikeout guy when he's healthy, but that's the big question mark, and you guys have already touched on that. So moving on, we can talk about the move happened relatively recently. Today, actually, the Mariners extended Dylan Moore to contract worth 3 years, $8.875 million. It's got a 1 year, $1.125 million worth of incentives baked in there for kind of a super utility guy for the Mariners. Those are good on every team. Mariners have theirs, and they locked him up.
Yeah, he's pretty average. He strikes out too much to really take off on the offensive side. He's more of just like a really fast guy that can play wherever the heck you want him to play. I really don't think he's got a lot of potential. It's cool that he's really patient and he walks a lot, but I think he's just one of those glue guys that not many people notice on the team, but without him, the team would sort of fall apart, because he's there whenever somebody gets injured, and he's able to, make up for his deficiencies by doing the little things like stealing bases or making plays in the field. So definitely an unheralded player, and he's not getting a huge deal, but I'm sure the Marlins are glad that they're able to keep him around for an extended period of time while he's still got his skills intact.
Oh yeah. So I mean, what does this lock him through? What age bracket? Because he's already isn't he 30, or is he close to it?
Yeah, it'll be
he's going
30, 31, and 32.
Yeah, it's a weird move, but if you're the Mariners, I think you're taking what you can get. He's pretty good. I mean, 126 WRC plus. Is he going to repeat that? Probably not. No. But we'll see.
He's been exactly 100 WRC plus for his career.
Mm-hmm.
League average, baby.
And that's okay, because that's still average.
It's just going to be different to try to fit him into this roster, because they've obviously added a lot, and I just don't really see where he's going to be other than just kind of let's glue him in there somewhere.
I think you just said it. That's it. I'm just gonna go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something. But moving
played-
on. Oh, if you want to talk more about Dylan Moore, go right ahead.
No, just to say he plays baseball, so you know.
He does play baseball.
Yeah.
Good point.
He does in fact play baseball.
Thank God.
But big crux of our podcast today, we got Isaiah on, we got Devin Withers. We could not have Matt. If you want to go back a couple of podcasts ago, where we had Matt Partridge, we all collaborated to do a big predictions article. Way too early predictions for 2023. We did this last year for 2022. Got a few things right, got a few things very wrong. So it'll be fun to revisit this later. But we're all going to talk about our predictions for several categories. This was Jake's article, and he led the way. So I will let him take the reins from me so we can all talk about it.
All right. Yeah, let's go. So, I think you set it up pretty well. So we have a few sections that we'll be covering to sort of prepare everybody for the baseball season. It's a good way to get our thoughts out there before things really start getting going with spring training. So the different sections we'll be covering are, teams that will make or won't make the postseason next year, the major awards, and then some World Series and bowl predictions at the end of the segment. But we'll start off with the team that didn't make the postseason in 2022, but will in 2023. So a bad team last year that will be much better this year. Devin, how about we start with you?
Yeah, listen, Jake, me and you are on the same boat for this one. We both have the Chicago White Sox is what it sounds like. Listen, what I wrote is I still love this roster. It was just absolutely cursed from the start. I felt like injury riddled. I got a good buddy who also writes for the Athletes Hub, Ray Ashworth, and he'll tell you, he'll blow up my phone every single day of the MLB season saying, dude, we just can't catch a break, and it's absolutely accurate. But going into this season, I love the fact they signed Andrew Benintendi, former New York Yankee. Obviously going to be rooting for him on the Chicago White Sox. 5 years, $75 million. I think he's going to boost the offense, does a little bit of everything. I think that they've got some promising prospects that could find some time in the majors if things crack the right way. And they've got a new manager. It's a new face of the franchise, and I think he's going to find some success in his first season. So it's going to be a dogfight in that division, but I think the Chicago White Sox are right where they need to be. Pending injuries, I think it's their division to lose.
Yeah, totally agree. I also chose the White Sox. I think that last point you made about the manager is probably going to be the biggest difference. I really think Tony La Russa was holding them back the past couple of years. I have met Tony La Russa, great guy. In some aspects, but not the best manager at his current age. And I think Pedro Grifol will do a much better job of keeping the camaraderie and the hopes high there. They really do have a talented roster, and they have a really good rotation that I think can carry them pretty far. They were the favorite for the last few years or so. They were good in 2021, but they really fell back last year. And this is a pretty easy division that I think they should be able to pretty easily run away with the division crown, if not just making the wild card. I know we've got some different thoughts on how the AL Central will turn out. Davis, who was your pick?
So I didn't want to go with the White Sox. One, I'm a Cubs fan, so I'm a hater. Two, I hate their offseason. I thought their offseason so far was pretty bad.
Mhm.
They overpaid for
Yeah.
Andrew Benintendi, who I don't think is nearly as good as the season he put up last year. They also signed Mike Clevenger, who's been outed as kind of an asshole. If you haven't been checking up on how that situation worked out, he threw and spit chewing tobacco at an infant, and he threw an iPad at his pregnant girlfriend. So Mike Clevenger most likely not going to be playing baseball this year, I'd have to imagine. Andrew Benintendi, not good enough. I'm not a big fan of their roster. I think it's very top heavy. Plus they lost kind of the heart and soul of their team, which is Jose Abreu. They have a lot of DH types that they kind of need to fit into roles. And I think you really only get away with like Andrew Vaughn now because you can just move him to first. You're banking on Luis Robert being good, etc. Plus, I'm just not a big fan of. I think the best hitter on their team is realistically Tim Anderson, And Tim Anderson is an Arias type for me, where he's not really a freight carrier on the offense. He's just a guy that makes the offense better. So my choice to win the AL Central or not to win the AL Central, but to get another playoff spot out of it, is the Minnesota Twins. The Twins are a coin flip in the same way that I think the White Sox could be. But the Twins' big coin flip is going to be their health. Everyone knows that that's kind of been the thing. They have Carlos Correa. Obviously, he signed 4 contracts in the offseason, ended up with the Twins back there. But they have top prospects like Royce Lewis, Nick Gordon to come in there. Also kind of injury question marks to go along with Byron Buxton. Joey Gallo, if he returns to form, is a huge boon to their offense. They obviously just added Pablo Lopez to their rotation, which I think is a very good rotation, led by Joe Ryan. Paddock, if he comes back healthy, is fine. Pablo Lopez is obviously very good. Sonny Gray had a very underrated season last year, although I'm not the biggest fan of his. I like the Twins. I think this is the best chance and the best roster they've had probably since the Bomba Squad years, which is when everyone knows, they're hitting 1 million home runs, breaking the home run record in a single season. So I like the Twins here. I think they've added, and I just think they've had the best offseason so far in that division. And I think they'll be the team that's more closely going to challenge the Guardians, who are at the top of it.
Very fair points. I think the Central is definitely up in the air, and it's also up in the air in the NL, where Isaiah made a pick there. Isaiah, who do you have making the postseason in 2023 after missing it last year?
Yeah, so for me, it's more of a wild card spot. I don't believe they're going to top the Cardinals. I'm sorry, Davis. But I do feel like they're going to do enough to make up that 1-game difference that kept them out of the playoffs last year behind a team I'm not going to mention to the next segment. But, they added Jesse Winker, right? That's their big move. But in reality, you got Christian Yelich coming back this year after a semi-healthy year. I feel like if he's going to bounce back, it's either this year or never. And I do think he will. You got Willie Adams in there. You still have a decent, you got Corbin Burns at the top, who is a Cy Young candidate every single year, right? As long as he's going to be there. And you added William Contreras, which is one of the best catchers in baseball. And he's going to, at least offensively, and he's going to bring that. They don't have much of a bullpen, but they do have Devin Williams in the closer spot, and he's shown things in the past. I like Aaron Ashby. That's just one name that pops out to me. I'm not really saying they're going to be a major transformation from last year, but I think they have just enough to make that climb, that extra climb. And I think the team we're going to talk about in a little while, once we get to that segment, it's going to have a fall off, and it's just going to be there for the taking for the Brewers. So.
Yeah, very good points. So we'll now move on to the team that made the postseason in 2022, but won't in 2023. So a team that was successful last year and won't be this upcoming year. I'm going to stick with Isaiah here. He hinted at this team, and I think this is a really hot take, to be honest, compared to our pretty mild takes. Who do you have missing the postseason in 2023?
I have none other than the NL representatives in the World Series, but the Philadelphia Phillies. I know they just had a Trea Turner. I know they were just in the World Series. I get it. I understand. But the Phillies are much like the Red Sox. They'll have 1 year where they do very well. They're in the World Series, and then the following year they have this drastic drop-off, and somehow they're in 4th or 5th place, right? I'm not saying they're going to be that far apart. But you don't have Bryce Harper for at least the beginning, the first half of the season, right? Your pitching rotation is good behind Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, but then you have Taijuan Walker, Ranger Suarez. We'll see what happens. The bullpen is decent, but it's also capable of crumbling. Like, you added Craig Kimbrell, and he hasn't really been good for a while now. We'll see what he does in that role. And you lose somebody like David Robinson, who was doing pretty good for you at the end of the year. I'm sorry, he was doing very well. Then your lineup, you have Kyle Schwarber still, and we've seen him. He's been good. He's been obviously one of the strongest hitters in baseball. Trea Turner, what's he going to do in his first years with the Phillies? We've seen so many big free agent signings. You need that little adjustment year. Is that enough? And then you're really just banking on a guy like Bryson Stott, who didn't really show much, but he's young, and we may see something from him. Nick Castellanos had an off year. You got Alec Baum. You're just hoping that some names deliver for you early on. I'm not saying they're going to be tremendously bad, but I expect a good drop-off. And they're going to definitely be 3rd place. Maybe they're only a few games out of the wild card, but I don't think they're going to have enough time. Maybe the following season I'll put them right back in there when Trea Turner has a year under his belt and you have Bryce Harper healthy. But
Yeah.
But then you might lose Aaron Nola, so I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know if
Yeah.
I feel very strongly about the year adjustment period for Trey Turner, who spent the large bulk of his career in the NL East in the first place. So, like, I mean, he's hit in those parks before. I think that'll be fine. And I actually think the back end of their bullpen is really very strong. Even if Kimbrel sucks, I mean, Greg Soto, Jose Alvarado, and Sir Anthony Dominguez is like electric at the back end of that pen.
Yeah.
But that's a take. That's a hot take for sure.
There are definitely some holes that Isaiah identified in that team, and it's going to be interesting to see how they make up for the absence of Bryce Harper. But this next team that Devin and Davis both agree on, as a matter of fact, I'm going to go to Devin first. Devin, why do you have the Tampa Bay Rays missing the postseason in 2023?
Well, I add in the White Sox, and I think the White Sox obviously going to take a spot. So that means I'm going to take away a spot in the American League as well. And what I look at is one of the most powerful divisions, not in just baseball, but potentially in all of American sports in the AL East. And I'm looking at all the teams around, and I'm saying, wow, the Yankees got a little bit better. The Blue Jays got a little bit better. The Red Sox are doing their own thing. They're sort of in this rebuild stage, this very weird transition stage. But even the Baltimore Orioles are getting better. Like, what kind of world are we living in? And then all of a sudden, I look at the LA East, and I'm looking at the Tampa Bay Rays, who have lost guys like Kevin Kiermaier, Corey Kluber, Mike Zunino in the offseason. And I'm not sure they're going to be able to keep up. You have to be able to win those divisional games. You have to be able – the American League wild card is just so competitive that I think going into the 2023 season, the Tampa Bay Rays are just battling for a wild card spot. They're not even battling for the division at this point. So basically you're competing with the likes of, you know, the other contenders in different American League divisions, such as maybe a Yankees or a Blue Jays or, you know, someone else from the Central or the West as well. So for me, I'm not a big fan of what the Tampa Bay Rays have done this offseason. I think that they're not going to be able to keep up, and they're going to fizzle out after a little bit.
Very good points. Davis, are you sort of on the same page, or do you have a different perspective on why they will miss in 2023?
I think I have more of a different perspective. I chose the Tampa Bay Rays because I think it was the easiest answer. I obviously, like Devin, who substituted the White Sox for them, I think I would put the Twins in over them. The Rays, their biggest move in the offseason was Zach Eflin, who currently figures to probably be either their fourth or fifth starter. And that's their big move. And I know I typically trust the Rays because it's so easy to, because they constantly make moves that usually make them better. They platoon a lot. They're like the East Coast Giants. It's just what they are. They're very, very good at getting the most out of what they have. It was just the easiest choice for me. They had the worst record that was of any playoff team, realistically. They only won like 86 games. They just snuck in. I think the obvious strength of their team is within their rotation. Obviously, you have guys like Rasmussen, McClanahan. Everyone knows how good McClanahan is. They extended Jeffrey Springs. The big one that you're banking on coming back to go along with Eflin to make your rotation a lot stronger is Tyler Glasnow. And if Tyler Glasnow comes back and isn't nearly as good, then a large portion of like the strength of your team gets a good bit worse. And I think that just kind of pushes them a little bit further down the pecking order for me. I would typically bank on the Rays, but I had to pick somebody, and they were the easiest choice.
Yeah, very fair. I don't feel as confident about my pick. I think the Guardians are going to miss in 2023, partially because the White Sox are going to be the one making it in. It's really hard for me to say that because I was a big Guardians fan alongside Davis last year at the beginning of the postseason, and they sort of let us down a little bit. But I just don't feel like they did enough this offseason to upgrade their team. They're a team that relies really heavily on their pitching, which sort of remains pretty solid, but it's not as deep as you would hope. Like, you got Tristan McKenzie and Shane Bieber up at the top of the rotation, which is solid, but both of those guys showed cracks in the armor last year. I think McKenzie is going to regress a little, and if that's a big regression to the mean, then it could be pretty fatal. And if Shane Bieber's reduced velocity ends up being a problem, then they could lose two of their good starters, and then they're relying on like Cal Quantrill, Zach Plesac, and Aaron Savale, which I wouldn't say is the most inspiring rotation out there. It's very solid as it is, but they're like, if one bad thing happens, the strength of the team starts to fall apart. The bullpen is also what could be considered the biggest strength of the team, but it's really like Class A and Karinchak, and then the rest of it is like no names that they've sort of turned into really solid relievers. So you never really know what's going to happen with relievers. Bullpens are fluctuate greatly, and the offense is just the clear weak point, and they only upgraded that by getting Josh Bell and Mike Zunino. I love Josh Bell as much as the next guy, but I don't think he takes them from a middling offense to one that's absolutely incredible. So I don't have too much faith in the Guardians because they just have cracks in the armor that could turn into giant holes and really start hurting the team. We do have a comment from Ray talking about the Rays. That's pretty funny. He says Wander Franco also can't stay healthy, was constantly on the IL last season. So he's backing you up. He's on Davis and Devin's side, saying that the Rays have even more reason not to make the postseason next year.
I think an important thing to also note about like the Guardians is if you are high on the White Sox, the Guardians only realistically got in because they won the division last year. The wild card race was very close. So the Guardians you could also have them nearly the same level as the Rays too.
Yeah.
If they falter a little bit, they'll fall off a cliff. Jake is wrong though. I'm Cal Quantrill truther. He is very good. Everyone knows it. He's really good. You should watch Cal Quantrill pitch every once in a while.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to a really fun section. I think we're going to be talking about the World Baseball Classic, which we have not seen since 2017. So it's been 5 long years. This is going to be the 5th edition of the WBC, where it's basically the Olympics of baseball. Since they got rid of baseball in the Olympics, I think they've brought it back actually since then, but they decided to create the World Baseball Classic where players go and represent their countries and play a little tournament during spring training to get everybody prepared for the season. I'm super pumped. The last one was really sick. Team USA took home the trophy, and surprisingly, none of us Americans are back in our team. Devin and Isaiah are sort of on the same page. So Devin, why don't you tell me why you've got your money on the Dominican Republic?
I thought everyone was going to take the U.S., and so I went with the Dominican. So I went in a different direction, thinking, the U.S. has got to be the popular answer. But the Dominican Republic, man, I'm looking at this lineup, and I'm seeing, I get Manny Machado and then Vlad Jr. to hit behind him, but then Devers to hit behind him at the 5 spot, and then Jose Ramirez at the 6 spot. All of a sudden, I've got the World Series MVP, Jeremy Pena, hitting at the 7 spot, and then you think that the further you go down, the worse the lineup's going to get. But then all of a sudden, the American League Rookie of the Year, Julio Rodriguez, is batting 9th in that lineup. I mean, it is stacked from top to bottom. I love this team. They're plus 200. They're actually the favorites to win it all. So I might just throw a few bucks on the Dominican Republic for this, as much as I want to stay patriotic towards the U.S., because the U.S. has a really nice lineup as well. But man, this is going to be a fun one to watch. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, that team is absolutely loaded. Isaiah, what's your thinking on choosing the DR?
Yeah, and look, I'm Puerto Rican, right? So like I tried to look for everything I could to like fight for my, or America, right? But I look at Dominican Republic, man. It's not only that there's so much talent on there, because Team USA has talent too, obviously. They're definitely gonna, they're number 2 right now, right? But the one thing that the Dominican Republic has is youth and hunger. There's players that were not in this position before, so they're gonna make the most of it. While on the other side, you got like Mike Trout, who's just really going to just be, trying to tune up and get ready to win the MVP or something, right? So, but on the other side, the DR, I think they want to win this. And it's funny how we mentioned a lot of names in that lineup. We didn't talk about number 8, which I believe is Gary Sanchez, but nevertheless.
I skipped over Gary Sanchez.
We skipped right over him, but it's okay. Like, even with him dropping balls, which he's bound to do, they have pitching, they have a bullpen, they have offense, they have hunger, they have youth, they have everything. They check all the boxes. Not that the USA doesn't. I just think that little extra edge is going to be enough for DR to win it all.
Yeah. I think the funniest part of our article is that the one non-American guy, Matt Partridge, is the one who chose Team USA. So that was pretty funny. You mentioned Team Puerto Rico, and I sort of wanted to go outside of the box because you guys were sort of choosing the big 3 of DR, USA, and the team Davis chose. So I went with Puerto Rico, and I sort of went the route of this is sort of a team that plays with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of heart and vigor. I think they also have the camaraderie that by playing playing the last tournament together and also just like being friends outside of baseball, I think that can really lift the team up. Just like having that teamwork there. They've got a really good infield with Correa and Lindor and Baez and some young guys like MJ Melendez and Jose Miranda, and their rotation's pretty solid. I'm pretty sure Marcus Stroman is switching sides from the USA to Puerto Rico, so that could be pretty cool as well. But I think they really stand out in their bullpen, where not only do they have like Joe Jimenez, Jorge Lopez, and Michael Givens, but they've got the Diaz brothers, the best duo of siblings in this tournament, in Edwin and Alexis Diaz. Edwin Diaz, best reliever in baseball right now. Alexis Diaz really broke out in his rookie year last year. So I'm excited to see them shut out some wins this tournament, and I think they're going to be a really exciting and fun team to watch, and I think that'll carry them. But I also wanted to pick the team that Davis chose, because this team might be just as stacked. They just have more unknown players because they haven't come stateside. But Davis, why did you choose the Team Japan?
I chose Team Japan, Samurai Japan, in case you're unfamiliar with the World Baseball Classic. First off, they're back-to-back champions, 2006, 2009. They're just very good. If you don't keep up with NPB, I sort of keep up with NPB. They have a lot of young stars just from that league that are insanely exciting. You have Munetaka Murakami, who's the first player in NPB to hit 50 home runs in a season since Hideki Matsui. And he's 22. He's 22 years old. He's third baseman, laser arm, insane power. And then you're like, okay, whatever. You got that guy. You got Seiya Suzuki, who had a pretty good season last year despite some injury. Lars Nootbaar, who's a big prime candidate to break out this upcoming season. You have guys like Masataka Yoshida, who me and Jake are really high on also this upcoming season because he walks at an insane rate. You look at the rest of their roster, and you're like, okay, sure, I know some of these names, whatever. Let's look at their rotation. Their rotation is insane. 1 to 4 is just stupid good if you're not familiar with Japan. First off, 2 names you should be familiar with, Shohei Ohtani. I mean, Shohei Ohtani could end up being their best hitter and their best pitcher. He's that good because he does that in Major League Baseball. You have Yu Darvish, who I'll talk about a little bit later, who I am always insanely high on. And then you've got 2 guys who I really want to talk about. We talked about one earlier in the last few episodes during the regular season. Roki Sasaki is one of the biggest prime candidates to come to the MLB next. He's basically being labeled the next Hideo Nomo.
He's crazy.
He's crazy good. Jake, are you also familiar with one Yoshinobu Yamamoto? Have you seen his stats in NPB?
I have not. Let's hear him.
Yoshinobu Yamamoto, just like Roki Sasaki, a little bit older. He's only 24. In the last 3 seasons in Nippon Professional Baseball with the Oryx Buffaloes, what do you think the highest ERA he's posted is? Just give me a first number.
3.
2.
Yeah, I was gonna say 2.1, 2.2.
2.2, and he's thrown 126 innings. That's the highest. His highest ERA over a full season, because he's thrown 126 innings, 193 innings, and 193 innings again. 2.2, 1.39, 1.68 ERA. He strikes out everybody, doesn't walk anyone, sub-1 whip.
Damn. Good luck.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you're facing this rotation, good luck.
Yeah,
their lineup will be good for 4 runs, and that's probably all they need.
What'd you say, Isaiah?
I was gonna say, are you sure he's not facing like my high school baseball team or something?
No, NPB is very highly lauded as basically being at the same level as quadruple A. NPB teams would probably beat most teams in the AL Central.
They destroy the A's.
They destroy the A's. They destroy the Tigers. They destroy a large chunk of MLB teams.
Yeah.
They have a very good team. And it's not I didn't even touch on all the names in their lineup, like guys that have been around the block in NPB, like Kensuke Kondo. Like, they have a lot of guys that are just very good, top to bottom. Rotation stupid. Bullpen just as good. They always have a couple weird guys that are like submariners that everybody struggles with. I'm really high on Japan. They're very good.
Yeah, this tournament's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. I think we're like a month away right now. It's going to be super sick to watch. Watch out for Team Israel for sure. I'll be
Matt
rooting
Mervis
for them. Let's go. But yeah, so that'll round out that sort of portion of the article. We'll now move on to our awards predictions. We'll start out with the big one, MVP, and we'll stick in the American League, where Davis and I are on the same page, and I think it's a pretty clear choice that Shohei Ohtani is going to win MVP. He was robbed last year. Sorry, guys. Judge was deserving if he wasn't facing the greatest athlete of all time, Shohei Ohtani. It's just nobody does what he does. Nobody else has ever done this in the history of baseball. Shohei Ohtani is probably the best player in the history of baseball. And after winning unanimous MVP in 2021, he went out and was even better in 2023 or 2022 and then wasn't the MVP. And I think as long as he stays healthy this next year, he's like the clear favorite. And I don't think anybody has a case. Even if they hit 100 home runs, I still think Ohtani is more valuable than whatever you can bring because he does both pitch as an all-star level pitcher and hit as an all-star level hitter. I think the comparison for him the last 2 years was Sandy Alcantara on the mound and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at the plate. That's one player. It's insane. It's bonkers. Davis, do you have any other take on that?
No, I just wanted to put numbers to what you were saying.
Please.
I literally put the only reason that like he should never not win MVP is unless somebody has a historic season like Aaron Judge and it's just like, okay, we're going to vote for him because he broke all these records.
Yeah.
Or he wins like 12 in a row and everyone's like, well, come on, guys. We need to give this to somebody else. But last season, Jake talked about just how good he was. He had basically 4 FWAR and 142 WRC plus, which is 42 points better than league average last season as a hitter. So he had 4 WAR as just a hitter, hitting part-time. He also had a 2.3 ERA, 2.4 FIP, 2.65 xFIP, and he posted 5.6 FWAR as a pitcher. So he's just so insanely good that like it genuinely takes otherworldly once in a lifetime season to have him not win MVP.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Shohei Ohtani's once in a lifetime season. We've seen what Judge has done. Barry Bonds did that in our lifetime. So that's there, but we'll stay away. We'll stay away from that debate right now. I don't think we should be doing that. We did that.
We'll be here all night. We'll be here.
But Isaiah's got the idea that actually one of Ohtani's teammates are going to show him up. Isaiah, who have you got for AL MVP?
I mean, it's crazy that this prediction sounds kind of crazy because he's teaming with Shohei Ohtani and he's going to overshadow Mike Trout every year that he's on the same team because Shohei Ohtani is doing something we have never seen and it's never been done before, which is exactly why I have a little bit of doubt that he can keep going. Like, can he just keep this pace going? And I do agree. Look, Aaron Judge, I'm not going to fight that he deserved because he's obviously a Yankee. He's my, it's Aaron Judge. He's my captain, right?
I mean, you're in Yankee Stadium right now. You have to defend.
Exactly. But if I could whisper so nobody can hear me in the back, I mean, as long as Shohei Ohtani keeps doing what he's doing, he deserves the MVP every single year. Like I said, I just don't know if he still can. But I do know that Mike Trout is going to continue to do what he's been doing for his entire career. Even last year when he only played 119 games, he still was able to hit 40 home runs, which was at least third in the American League. I don't know if it was the entire league, and he had 80 RBIs in a short time frame, and it was like in such a quick fashion. Like I feel like if he would have played the full year, he might have had more home runs than Mike Trout, than Aaron Judge. I'm sorry. I mean, he's the best player. I got to stutter now. Like I think Shohei Ohtani is the best player, but anybody not named Shohei Ohtani, I mean, he's in his own category. Okay, it's Mike Trout. He may go down as the best player we ever seen. Also, so it's a shame that neither of them will be in the playoffs, by the way. But Mike Trout.
Don't put those bad vibes out there, Isaiah. But yeah, it's definitely fair. Mike Trout's the original GOAT. I think Shohei Ohtani is the current GOAT, but Mike Trout has definitely been on a Hall of Fame path for the entirety of his career. Devin went a completely different route, and I can't say I don't like it. I love this guy. So let me hear your case for Jose Ramirez as AL MVP in 2023.
Listen, I figured someone was going to go with Ohtani. I figured Isaiah was going to go with Aaron Judge, maybe for a back-to-back. So I thought to myself, man, I gotta look just inwards right here. And I looked into my fantasy baseball lineup with Jake and Davis helped me out so much. I actually ended up winning the fantasy baseball league with their help because of this guy, Jose Ramirez. Now you rewind way back to June. Jose Ramirez actually suffered a thumb injury, which kept him lingering the whole entire season, but still managed to put up 29 home runs, 126 RBIs, and was hitting 280. In November, he had to get thumb surgery once he was eliminated from the postseason because of ligament damage. Yeah, I beat Ray in the playoffs. That's right, in the finals. And now you're telling me that this season they get Josh Bell to hit in the same lineup. So now Jose Ramirez isn't going to be intentionally walked as much, intentionally walked at a league high 20 times last season. So you got to figure that rate's got to go down a little bit with Josh Bell in the lineup, even if it's by 2 or 3. And he finished top 5 in MVP voting 4 different times. He was the runner-up for the award in the 2020 season. And I don't know, guys. I think you come into this season 100% healthy. All eyes are going to be on these favorites. But, man, Jose Ramirez is turning into one of my favorite players, not just in the American League, but the entire MLB. And I'm keeping him in fantasy baseball, right? You can book it now.
Go. Nice. I love that pick, and I totally agree, but I cannot say I love this next pick. Devin, who you have winning the MVP in the NL?
Yeah, this one was just sort of messy all over. I mean, the AL compared to the NL when it comes to just MVP, I feel like it's so clear-cut with the American League. You could go Ohtani, you could go Judge, or you could go Ramirez, and I guess Trout would be like your big 4, right? But then in the NL, it's like, where do you sort of go? Like there's 5,000 different directions you can go in. The reason I chose Mookie Betts, it's sort of a hot take because in a little bit, I feel like everyone's about to gang up on the LA Dodgers and claim that they're going to stink this season. I don't know. I mean, I just got this vision in my mind that that's going to happen a little bit later in the show. But if by some chance the Dodgers can just close out the narrative that they're going to, go into this downward spiral for the 2023 season, it's going to be on the back of Mookie Betts to carry this offense. They have lost multiple key pieces to this roster, both in the pitching staff, in the lineup altogether. And a lot of people don't even think that the LA Dodgers are going to make the playoffs, which is absurd because the last time that they didn't even win 90 games was like a decade ago. So I do think that Mookie Betts is going to end up having a terrific season. We already know what he can do on the defensive end. Unfortunately, the defense doesn't win you the MVP, but I do think Mookie Betts is going to put together a really, really good year this year.
Yeah, I love me some Mookie. I hate me some Dodgers. Sticking in the NL West, Isaiah, who do you have winning the NL MVP next year?
Yeah, I mean, don't look now, but Manny Machado is in a contract year, okay?
Uh-oh.
When he first signed that deal, 10 years, $300 million, right? It was like, oh my God, that's way too much money. Now it's like a bargain of a contract. Yes, 5 years left, $150 million after this season. After seeing what Aaron Judge just got, you have to believe he's going to go after some money. Of course, he's going to go after it. One of the best defensive players, if not the best defensive player in Major League Baseball, coming off of one of his better offensive seasons in his prime, in a contract year, with the Padres going to be contenders, and Fernando Tatis is coming back, and they added some pieces, and they missed on some pieces, but they got Xander Bogaerts as well. Manny Machado is going to go off. He does it all. And like Devin said, it's very weird. I feel like this is just the one guy that's perhaps most motivated. You see a lot of guys that are injured, missing time, and there's Machado just doing what he always does. So I'm going to go with him.
Yeah, he narrowly missed out last year, so it's going to be a tough race in the NL. Davis, you've got a guy who's good at hitting home runs, and that seemed to pay off in the AL last year. So who do you have winning the MVP in the National League this year?
I actually wrestled with picking the same guy that Isaiah chose, Manny Machado, because he was the one I was banging the drum for winning MVP in the NL last year. But this time, starting in the NL East, because Jake may or may not stay in it. I chose another NL first baseman because Paul Goldschmidt won it last year at this time, Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso, if you were unaware last season, he pushed Paul Goldschmidt for a large chunk of the season. He was just right there in the NL MVP conversation, along with Manny Machado and Goldschmidt. Kind of fell off a little bit down the stretch. He also gets dinged a little bit because he's a pretty miserable defender. But here's the thing. I think the Mets are going to be very good this year, just like they were last year. And here's where a bunch of nerd stats like WRC Plus and stuff are going to potentially fall by the wayside. Although I like nerd stats. I know Jake does. He had a 143 WRC Plus. Pretty good. Guess you're wondering, it's 43 points above league average. He hit 40 dingers. he drove in a all of baseball leading 131 runs for the Mets. So does that again. Home run numbers go up. I have to think they'd probably give it to him just because he'd be the chief run producer on one of the best teams in baseball. One of the stats that I really enjoyed was he had 35 at-bats last year where he put his team in the lead. That's 4 or better than the next person in all of baseball. So he was the league leader in making his team take the lead. I just like Pete Alonso. He has gotten better almost every single year. He's a guy that walks about 10% of the time, and he cut since he's come into the league in 2019, he has really cut his strikeout rate a ton. He was a 25% guy last year, all the way down below 19% for the first time in his entire career. And I'd have to think that's just going to go down. He's hitting for more average. I think if he ends up hitting 290 with 47 dingers and drives in 135 runs again or whatever, I think it's going to be tough to look at Pete Alonso and be like, nah, I don't think that guy's the most valuable player. Just because the NL is so wide open, I wanted to be a little different, but I really like Pete Alonso's chances. Plus, another rule that I think is really cool. I touched on this in the article, so you can go read the entire thing. Make sure you do that at athleteshub.org. The shift is going to be fundamentally changed, if not entirely eliminated. Teams will find ways to get around it a little bit, but Pete Alonso was one of the biggest right-handed hitters that benefited from not having the shift. His WOBA, so his weighted on-base average, was 60 points better exactly at 391 compared to 331 without the shift compared to with the shift. So no more shift. He's going to be even better. It's just I like Pete Alonso for NL MVP.
Yeah, and he's got the spotlight of New York that sort of helped out Aaron Judge last year as well. So he's got that in his favor. Like you sort of hinted at, we're sticking in the NL East for my pick. And this one sort of takes a little winding with your mind to get there, but it makes some sense. I've got Jazz Chisholm Jr. winning the NL MVP, and I don't like, this is clearly a dark horse pick, but I don't really see it as me sort of going with the dark horse there. I think there's a couple reasons for me making that pick. First of all, if you look at the odds, there's not a clear front runner for NL MVP going into next year, based on the fact that there are 18 players with the best odds. The top 18 players with the best odds in the National League are from a group of 6 teams, which is very stark contrast to the American League, where the top 18 is represented by 12 different teams. So it seems like all of the talent is sort of concentrated on a few really good teams. And that does 2 things. First, it means that these players are going to be taking votes away from each other on their own team. So like for Manny Machado, you got Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis, and Xander Bogaerts taking votes away from him. For the Mets, you've got Francisco Lindor and others taking votes away from him. Maybe Jeff McNeil steals a couple of votes. Who knows? But that sort of leaves open the avenue that you can make an argument that those players aren't even the best players on their team. So how could you then say that they're the most valuable player in baseball, in the National League? So like for Manny Machado as a test case, again, if he's the most valuable player on his team, that means he has to be more valuable than Juan Soto and Fernando Tatis. And if you can make the case sort of that those players are maybe even more valuable on his own team, then that sort of takes away from their votes. And so if you look further down on the list towards the top 20 area, you see some other guys. Seiya Suzuki, I sort of wrestled with there. I think that one's very dark horse, but Jazz Chisholm Jr. sort of makes the case for himself when you look at his stats a little bit closer. Last year, he struggled with injuries, and that sort of knocked out the whole second half of his season. And he was on pace for like a 6-WAR season with 30 home runs and 30 steals. This is a guy with tons of talent and lots of charisma. I think that sort of makes him exciting to watch, but this is a guy that if you let him play the whole season, he's going to be like a 30-30 guy who maybe strikes out a little bit too much, but really helps out the team that doesn't have a star player. So he will stand out really greatly on that team. But also he's moving to center field this year with the team acquiring Luis Arias. So not only does that allow him to sort of focus on different aspects of his game, you won't have to focus on his arm, which has definitely been a struggle for him, but maybe it'll keep him healthy. And also it increases his WAR totals because the multiplier there for center fielders is a lot friendlier than it is for second baseman. So if he's that same 6-WAR second baseman, he's like a 7 or 8-WAR center fielder, which is crazy. So all he really has to do is stay healthy. And then the added limit, or the added sort of thing there, is that he's on the cover of MLB The Show. A lot of people are sort of wary of that. They're just like, why is this guy that not many people know, that aren't like huge baseball fans, know who he is? I think this is his year to let everybody know who he is and show everybody that he deserves to be on that cover. So I'm really excited to see Jazz Chisholm Jr. take a big breakout. And before we move on to Cy Young, Ray has been putting his own predictions in the chat. We've got Shohei Ohtani, AL MVP. Davis and I completely agree with that. It's an easy one. We got Ronald Acuna in the National League. So we've got NL West and NL East taking over the MVP awards. I think that's a really good pick. I think if Acuna can return some of the power that he lost last year, it'll be really a big season for him, a return to what he was before that. Definitely exactly what Ray says, that a year back from the ACL injury, he'll return back to form. But he also agrees with me that Jazz Chisholm Jr. is a great dark horse pick. And he says that Devin knows very well that Ray's a big fan of him. But yeah, just got to stay healthy and get used to playing center field. But hey, he said he was going to go out and win a Gold Glove if the Marlins didn't go acquire center fielder. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. But to give myself a break from talking after giving the case extensively for Jazz Chisholm, I'm going to move on to the Cy Young Award. We'll once again start with the American League, and I'm going to go straight to Isaiah because I love his pick, and I wanted to pick this guy, but I said, you know what, I'm going to be different. But this is one of my favorite players in baseball right now. Isaiah, why did you choose Alek Manoah?
I'm very big. I say the same thing a lot when it comes to these types of players. I talk about youth, I talk about hunger, and I talk about you getting better every single year. And he has an offense behind him. Like when we were talking about who could potentially make the playoffs, I wanted to talk about the Blue Jays so bad, but I'm just scared after last year I had them like in the World Series, so I'm not going to go there. But there's still that possibility there, and Alek Manoah just has that like fire. I saw him mic'd up a couple of times, and he's just one of those guys that like he's going to get better every single year. The ERA is there, all the pretty numbers are there, the strikeouts are there. You see in the intro, he embarrassed Aaron Judge once upon a time. So I just like Alek Manoah a lot, and I think he's in a nice situation and he's comfortable. He's not a rookie anymore. I think he's a top tier starting pitcher, and you're going to see more of that this upcoming series.
Mm-hmm. I love me some Alek Manoah. He was great when he was mic'd up in the All-Star game last year. I also really like Davis's pick of Luis Castillo. Davis, why you got the Mariners ace up there winning the AL Cy Young Award like that?
Well, another bit of news that helps this case is that Luis Castillo has just been announced to not be pitching in the WBC, so his arm will be a little bit more fresh once the season starts. Nice. So, but I chose Luis Castillo, who was obviously the big prize last season, trade deadline, going to Seattle from Cincinnati. Everyone knows what Luis Castillo has been and has been before. He's a huge strikeout guy. Doesn't typically throw a lot of innings, and that was kind of similar. Last season, he struck out 167 and 150 and 150 in the third innings. But he changed his fastball, like he changed his usage of his pitches. He was very much like a fastball changeup, and then would mix in his slider kind of guy in Cincinnati, and he just turned straight into fastball slider, sort of the DeGrom mold. So fastball slider in Seattle, complete turnaround. He had a 152 average and a 180 XBA against his fastball, which rose in velocity last year as well. He's one of the biggest fireballer starters, usually averages about 97, 98 on his fastball, and they just don't hit it. Slider wasn't as good. Guess what? Still 183 average against 218 XBA. Still miserable. If you want to know just how good his fastball was in general, opposing hitters got 5 extra base hits off his fastball all year. 5 extra base hits against the fastball in general. They slugged 194 against it, which would be his slug would be better than a lot of other starters average against their fastball, just his slug. Run value. I really like run value. If you look at Savant, run value is the best way you can look at just how effective a pitch was for a certain pitcher. -18 run value for his fastball, -8 for his slider, big usage change. And then down the stretch, he had a 2.37 ERA, which was league leading during I think they won like 52 games compared to they had a huge hot streak last year, and he was just really good. Castillo, I think he's being incredibly underrated. I've seen several lists. If you look at the stupid MLB top 10 right now, he's not considered a top 10 starter in the AL right now, and I don't understand why. I think he's the best pitcher in Seattle, and I think he's going to be the best pitcher in the entire American League. He's just get a full season, get him more innings where he's just doing what he did last year. Seattle is more of a pitcher's park in general, too. He's really good, man. I think the betting odds for him were like 1,500 or higher, and that's
That's a good bet.
That's a good bet. I'd take that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. So Castillo gets a lot of strikeouts, but Devin took that to heart and said, I'm going to choose one of the best strikeout pitchers in all of baseball. Devin, who do you have winning the AL Cy Young in 2023?
Listen, last year was a crazy year for Justin Verlander, huh? He just ran away with the AL Cy Young, and I think the runner-up right here, Dylan Cease, I think he's going to have another good year, second consecutive season with 200-plus strikeouts, and he just posted a 2.20 ERA. I mean, how much better can you really get? A 2.2 ERA, over 200 strikeouts. And if you look at the voting for the American League and the National League Cy Young voting, I mean, he ended up with 97 points in terms of voting. He had 14 second-place votes, 10 third-place votes, 5 fourth-place votes, and a fifth-place vote as well. There was no one else, aside from the actual winners of Sandy Alcantara and Justin Verlander, that really came close, aside from Alek Manoah, who was about 5 points behind him. And then after that, you're dropping all the way down to Ohtani, who was another 5 points behind him. So it was basically the two winners, and then he was right there, right behind him. But I love what he's doing. I sort of have to be logical about this move, right? I can't just throw my predictions at the wall and just hope that something sticks. I have the Chicago White Sox making the postseason, and if it's going to happen, it's going to be on his back. So I'm going to stick with the logic that the White Sox are going to slither their way into the postseason, but if it's going to happen, it's going to be on the back of their pitchers.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see if he can keep that role going next year. He's got one of the best sliders in all of baseball, but he also walks more batters than anybody else. So it's a big contrast there. But I've got another young pitcher. This one's a lefty. I've got Shane McClanahan winning the AL Cy Young Award. I was big on his breakout last year. I was right. He was incredible in the first half. Pitching to a 1.71 ERA and a 0.80 whip across 110 innings with a 35.7% strikeout rate, which was absolutely incredible. Then he had like a shoulder impingement and was sort of struggling with injuries and stamina issues, and that sort of took out his second half. But his final line was still incredible. He still struck out more than 30% of batters. He really induced weak contact really well and forced a ton of ground balls. And he's also one of the best pitchers at inducing swinging strikes and getting called strikes, which is really great for his CSW, which was second best among starters. He's got a great repertoire of pitches. He's got one of the fastest fastballs from a lefty. He also has a curveball, a slider, and an amazing changeup. And he's on a team that really knows how to get the most out of their starters. I think as McClanahan gets older and sort of builds up the strength in his arm, he could have a really just continue that breakout in full next year and just be unstoppable throughout the year as he sort of gets closer to 180 innings. And I see McClanahan taking home that award next year. Ray, as a matter of fact, agrees with Devin here, saying that Devin's a smart man because he's a White Sox fan. So he likes the Dylan Cease pick there. But we'll move on to the National League, where I'll go straight back to Devin again because he has once again chosen a freaking Los Angeles Dodger to win a major award. Devin, why have you disappointed me like this again?
See, this might be me contradicting myself because this might be me just throwing something at the wall and hoping it sticks between Mookie Betts and Julio Urias, right? Because Urias had a fantastic season last season, ended up third in Cy Young voting. He had a 2.16 ERA. You know, I mean, once again, you can't get much better than that. And I do think that Clayton Kershaw, I forget who said it. They said Clayton Kershaw is the face of the Dodgers pitching staff. I don't know who said it in the article, but I'll tell you what, he can be the face all he wants, but I think Urias is the true ace of the LA Dodgers. And I think, once again, if the LA Dodgers are going to somehow win that division and they're going to somehow make some noise in the postseason, even with the pieces that they've lost over the offseason, it's got to be on the back of their true ace, which I think is going to be Julio Urias. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him this season. You get the bright lights in LA, but we talked about before, those bright lights, they either come with a lot of negativity or they come with a lot of merit as well.
Mm-hmm. Great point. We'll stick in the NL West, and Davis sort of hinted at this one earlier when talking about the World Baseball Classic. So, Davis, who do you have winning the National League Cy Young in 2023?
Last year for AL Cy Young, I chose a weird pick, and this year I think it's slightly less weird, but I still think it's a little bit on the more unusual side. I talked about him with Samurai Japan. I think Yu Darvish is a really good candidate and an underrated one to compete for an NL Cy Young. I think he's a huge pillar of the Padres rotation that gets forgotten about a lot because you have Musgrove, you got Snell. Darvish is really good last year. He's very solid, rock steady, 3.10 ERA, 3.31 FIP, 3.58 xFIP. He threw 194 innings, almost under 95 because it was 194 and 2/3. If you don't watch Yu Darvish pitch, he has the literal deepest arsenal of any starter in all of baseball. He realistically throws about 15 pitches. That is not an exaggeration either. He throws like anywhere from about 12 to 15 different pitches and typically leans on about 6 to 8 of them within a given game. Last season, if you look at his pitch data, because it's tough to look at Yu Darvish because his pitch data is so skewed because he throws so many pitches. You look at him on Savant, you're like, what's up with this guy? Because his fastball velocity is in the 15th percentile. That's because it tracks his cutter, which he throws more than everything. His cutter is one of his most dominant pitches. His velocity on his fastball rose last year. He's 36. He throws 95. He's 36. I just don't know what more you really want from him. He still strikes everybody out. Last year, from first half to second half, he was one of the top 20 gainers in terms of strikeout percentage, in terms of walk percentage, because Yu Darvish, if you remember the early part of his career, walked everybody. And then in his later years, especially since coming from the Cubs, he doesn't walk anybody. He's like down to a 4% walk rate. Nobody gets walked by him. And then last year, look who won it last year. Justin Verlander. 39, 40. It's an old man's game. It's an old man's game, this NL Cy Young thing. So I like Yu Darvish. He's one of my favorite baseball players. So there is a little bit of bias in this pick. I'm very aware. But also, he posted a sub 200 batting average against 4 pitches in his arsenal, and it only tracks 6 of them on Savant. So 4 of his main pitches, sub 200 batting average against. He plays in Petco. Like, numbers are going to be better there, obviously. His advanced metrics back up what he's doing, though, so it's not just a product of his environment. I think Yu Darvish, he just has years, if you look at 2020, where he'll just pop off, won't walk anybody, strike everybody out. He's very, very capable, and I think I would bank on him over someone like Snell or Musgrove, who have current better betting odds to win the NL Cy Young over him. I just think Darvish is rock steady. I think his floor is very high, and his ceiling is astronomically high as well.
Great points. Yeah, I like Isaiah's pick as well. I think it's one of the best innings eaters in all of baseball. Isaiah, who do you have winning the National League Cy Young next year?
Yeah, you just said it, Aaron Nola. He's on my fantasy team, so I've been seeing firsthand what he can do. But last year, he had a couple of implosions. There was one game where he gave up 8 runs against. Let me see. It was against. I saw it anyway. I can't find it, but you know what? He's capable of imploding. But I think he's going to get that down a little bit more because aside from an implosion, he's been really good. He was strikeout wise. He was 4th in the league with a 3.25 ERA. He is in a contract year, and even though I do see the Phillies falling off, I think you're going to see him keeping them in it, and he's going to be the bright spot of last year's NL champion. And I think he's going to do very well. Like I said, he's going to patch up those things. It's going to be like Jacob deGrom. He's going to get no run support, but he's going to put up some great numbers, and he's going to get paid.
That's crazy to say, no run support.
By the way,
what did you say, Devin?
it was against Arizona. Was the opponent you were thinking of?
He had doubles. He had a couple
of innings. 8 earned runs off
That
across
whole team
10
is
hits, 5
4
strikeouts.
Yeah, 5 runs here, 4 runs there.
Yeah.
but more often than not, he was elite. It's just his bad games are just really bad. That's all.
Yeah. He's really consistent. It's crazy that you said no run support with a lineup like that, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
No defensive support.
Rolling with it.
Yeah, defense is a good thing to say with the shift ban and a guy who really relies on ground balls. But he is a very consistent pitcher. Another guy who has been actually really consistent over the past few years is Max Fried, and that's my choice for the National League Cy Young. And this is another one where it's just you look at the stats and this guy's really good. He doesn't walk anybody. He gets a ton of ground balls. He limits hard contact, and he's been really good across the past couple seasons. But if you look a little closer, he's actually been even better in the second half. He's got a 2.74 ERA and a 1.05 WHIP across the past two seasons. But if you look at the second half of each of those seasons, he's been even better somehow, if that's possible. He had a 1.74 ERA in the second half of 2021 across 93 innings. And then in the second half of 2022 across 66 innings, he had a 2.18 ERA. So if that's something that he can carry throughout the season, there's not really a case to be made for anybody else if the guy's going to have an ERA down near 215 or so. And even though he doesn't strike out too many batters, it's slightly above league average at 23% last year. It really doesn't matter as long as he's eating a lot of innings. If he gets close to 200, we just saw Sandy Alcantara, who's not the biggest strikeout pitcher, win the Cy Young unanimously last year. So it's not a must to strike out a ton of batters if you want to win this award. So I think if Fried does an incredible job of limiting base runners and limiting runs, he's got a pretty clear path to winning this award. I also sort of predicted him last year. Once I saw him debut for the season on opening day, he was throwing like 98 miles per hour. I'd never seen him do that. He's not really a soft tosser, but he's not a guy that lights up the radar gun. And he was just chucking it in there. And I'm going to transfer that prediction over into this year and say Max Fried wins the National League Cy Young Award in 2023. We'll now move on to a award that's looking even further into the future at guys that are going to be the next stars in Major League Baseball. We're looking at the Rookie of the Year award predictions for 2023. I think we had different choices for every single pick except for in the National League from Devin and Isaiah. So we'll start in the National League here. And this is a guy who briefly debuted at the end of last year. So Isaiah, why have you chosen your best friend, Francisco Alvarez, as the 2023 NL Rookie of the Year award winner?
Because he's my best friend. Okay, that's why.
Good point.
Like, look, it's funny. Like, I have 2 New York picks for the Rookie of the Year, but I'm not being biased about my Yankee one. I'm being biased about the Mets one. Not only is he a nice person and a nice human being, he has a whole lot of pop in that bat too, and it's been following him in every class that he went through. I know he in AAA he struggled a little bit, but he still was able to smack home runs. That's just what he does. He just has all he has to do is put the bat on the ball, and it's gonna go out. That's how he plays. Defensively, he could use some work, and we'll see what happens with that. But he has a bat. He's gonna, and I'm big on like just having support and having people to protect you in the lineup. And the Mets have a great lineup, and they're gonna be in the playoff push. And I think he's gonna be one of the centerpieces of that. He's gonna get a lot of that. You know, he's gonna be the new kid on the block, and he's gonna do very well. And he's a great human being.
Yeah. So. MLB Pipeline's number 3 prospect, Francisco Alvarez. Devin, do you have another take on why you think Alvarez is going to take home the trophy next year?
Yeah, you mean a different take aside from he's my best friend? Because I unfortunately don't know him.
Not yet,
at least. Yeah, but so they have Omar Narvaez currently listed as the projected opening day starter on the depth chart, but I do think that Alvarez is going to take this spot sooner than later. Jake mentioned a very, very good point. Late last season, the Mets trusted enough to not only have him on the active roster and bring him up to the majors, but he was on that active roster going into the postseason. So they have to trust him at least a little bit, right? And then Isaiah brings up a really good point about the pop in the bat. 51 home runs across the last 2 seasons combined as well. He's got the power to make it in the big leagues. And so it leads me to this sort of hot take that if he gets enough playing time and he gets enough plate appearances, does he become the first Mets rookie catcher since Mike Piazza in 1993 to hit 30 or more home runs in his rookie season? It could very well be the case. He has the power to do it. I just hope that he ends up getting those opportunities. Like I said, I thought the NL was a little bit more confusing for me as opposed to my AL pick, but I do love the opportunity that Francisco Alvarez could have in the 2023 season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've got Ray sort of predicting the next two picks, saying Corbin Carroll, but watch out for
Carroll's
Jordan
not
Walker. Davis went pretty chalky here, and he went with the favorite for the NL Cy Young or NL Rookie of the Year award, and that's MLB Pipeline's number 2 prospect, Corbin Carroll. Davis, why do you have no originality?
So I went with a bit of a weirder pick for my AL choice and for my NL Cy Young choice. So I thought I'd need to hedge my bets and choose a sure thing, because I think Corbin Carroll, I think it's really very clear to see why he would be the favorite. He's guaranteed an opening day spot, opening day center fielder for the Diamondbacks. He's going to play all the time. He's the number 2 prospect in baseball currently, and you could argue he's probably the most hyped center field prospect since Mike Trout. Fastest player in baseball, really high on base. I think he's got like a career 426, 430 on base in like the minors. In the minors last year, he slashed 307, 425, 610, hit 25 dingers, 31 steals in 93 games. So he did all that in 93 games. Fastest player in all of baseball, fastest StatCast, average sprint speed. He also only played 30 games, and he posted a 130 WRC plus and almost 1.5 FWAR in 30 games. He's just really good. If you do that over a full season, he would have been worth 6 FWAR, which would have put him almost in the MVP category race, and not just Rookie of the Year. So I think Corbin Carroll, he's a stud, man, and he's going to be really good for years to come. I think he's going to win MVP running away.
Yeah, running away. That's a good one there because he's so fast.
Gotcha.
You guys were looking at the top of the MLB pipeline with the number 2 and number 3 prospects in all of baseball. So I decided to go a little bit further down the list, and I chose the number 4 prospect in all of baseball, Jordan Walker of the St. Louis Cardinals. This is a guy who's not really being predicted so much to win this award. And I think that's sort of a travesty. Not that I'm like upset about it, but I really think he should have a better case because he is so good. And I don't think we've seen his full potential yet. Last year, he batted .306 with 19 homers, 22 steals, and a 128 WRC plus at Double-A at the age of 21 or at the age of 20. So he'll be 21 entering this season. This is a guy that's 6'5". He came up as a third baseman, and everyone knows Cardinals employ one of the best third basemen in all of baseball, Nolan Arenado. So you're not going to bring up Jordan Walker. He's being blocked there. So they started playing him in the outfield at the Arizona Fall League. He even played a little bit of center field. So he's athletic enough to play center field, and he'll likely figure in somewhere in the outfield and at DH. But I think this is a guy that's going to come up and really knock everybody's socks off just by putting his skills on full display with the power and the speed and the athleticism. I think he's a really special talent. He's going to show everybody that, they really messed up by not picking him for NL Rookie of the Year when they could have. But yeah, move on to the AL. I'll stick with myself here because I've been going last on all these. So I'll go with who I think is a clear pick, but obviously not because nobody else agreed with me. I think Masataka Yoshida, coming over from Japan and joining the Boston Red Sox, is the clear favorite here. And I don't even think it's close. He was so incredible in Boston. He is a guy with some of the best plate discipline you'll ever see. He walked twice as much as he struck out in each of the past 3 seasons over in Japan. It's hard to tell if that's going to carry over. He's definitely not going to strike out a lot, and he's going to walk a lot. Maybe it not be twice as much, but it's still going to be incredible. And he actually batted over 320 in each of the past 5 seasons. So he's an incredible contact hitter with great plate discipline. He's even shown decent amount of power, decent to great amount of power. He's topped out at 29 home runs back in 2019, which is crazy with his skill set. He's like Juan Soto with a little bit less power. Obviously, that power is not going to carry over, but the projection systems still expect him to be well above average. Steamer has him batting .298 with 18 homers and a 140 WRC plus, while the projection system that I trust the most for batters, the BatX, has him at .283 with 16 homers and a 129 WRC plus. That's really good. He's not the best fielder, so he may not be racking up a lot of WAR, but I think if he's around like 3 to 4 WAR and is showing that crazy discipline and incredible bat, it's going to be pretty hard to put up pit these young studs against him, because this is a guy who's a seasoned veteran and just like knows how to control the zone and knows how to control the bat. And I think he's really going to be incredible when he comes over. So if that's not the clear number one pick, then maybe the number one overall prospect in all of baseball is. Devin went with that guy. Devin, why did you choose Gunnar Henderson?
So I thought this was the clear choice. I didn't even really think of Yoshida at first, but I see your logic with it. But I think that Gunnar Henderson has that very clear path to, he's going to start on opening day. I think he's going to start for third base for the Baltimore Orioles, and I think he's going to have a great season. Right now, his odds, according to MLB.com, to win the American League Rookie of the Year are about 3.5 to 1 odds. So you got to like those chances. For me, this is a player that is projected right now to have over 20 homers, over 75 RBIs, according to the projections. And you got to think back to this 2019 draft, and you just got to think to yourself, man, the Baltimore Orioles really killed it. Their first round pick ended up being Adley Rutschman, and their second round pick ended up being this guy, Gunnar Henderson. So I'm excited to see what Baltimore ends up doing. Like I said before earlier in this podcast, this is a team that somehow, some way is getting better when they've just been the laughingstock of the AL East over the last several years. So I'm excited to see what they do with their young youth.
Gunnar Henderson definitely has a bright future ahead of him. It's yet to be seen if that starts in 2023. So we've talked about the top 4 prospects in all of baseball. So let's round out the top 5 and let Isaiah Hansen talk about the 5th best prospect in all of baseball.
Yes, Anthony Volpe. Now, look, there's no bias here, okay? There's no bias here. I think he is going to win the shortstop job. And maybe there's a little bias for the fact that I watched him play and saw him in the minor leagues. So, look, I was talking to my friend with, fantasy baseball-wise, and we were talking about, like, somebody like Trace Sweeney, who was getting a lot of attention. And I'm not a baseball scout, okay? But when I was watching these games, I was looking at Trace Sweeney, and he wasn't beating pitchers. He was capitalizing on their mistakes. So he's playing baseball, but then somebody like Anthony Volpe is someone who plays chess. Like, he was beating pitchers. He was, he was beating them on the base paths. Like, he just knew when to steal. He wasn't just reckless on the base path. That's why he hit 20 home runs and had 50 stolen bases. The first player to do that in the minor league since Andrew Jones in 1995. Okay, and Andrew Jones was a really great player, obviously. Just had a second. He was the Vince Carter for a little bit of baseball. And I think he's going to be, again, in a great lineup. And I think he's going to have the opportunities to win the shortstop job. It's his to lose, in my opinion. Like, Isaiah kind of left up, besides having the same name as me, I don't think he's really going to hold much. Okay.
That guy's going to be DoorDash.
I do like Oswald Peraza. Peraza's a really nice player as well, but I think it's for Volpe to take. He's going to hit home runs, and it's in the Yankee Stadium, so you're capable of hitting home runs. And then he is going to get those stolen bases as well. He's going to be one of just those hard-nosed players, and he knows how to beat guys. That's the difference between somebody like him and, say, Trace Sweeney.
Is he the next Derek Jeter?
No.
All right. This next one is definitely I think the one that's the most out there, but I don't disagree with it. Davis, who was your pick for AL Rookie of the Year award for 2023?
So I chose Angels catcher Logan O'Hoppe. So I have several reasons, and I mulled this over for quite a long time. I was between a few, and funny enough, it was not Gunnar Henderson. It was not Volpe. It was between Masataka Yoshida, Logan O'Hoppe, and Curtis Mead of the Tampa Bay Rays, because I'm a huge fan of his. But I really like O'Hoppe. I think he's got – you talked about Gunnar Henderson being able to walk into a lineup. You talk about Masataka Yoshida walking into a lineup. Guess who has the best chance on the Angels to win the starting catcher job? Because the only person in his path, talked about it last podcast, Max Stassi. Do you really think Max Stassi is going to block this guy, the guy that had a 144 WRC plus with the Phillies last year before he got traded for Brandon Marsh in what will become one of the worst trades of all time, or the 194 WRC plus with the Angels when he was with their double and AAA affiliates? So he's a really good young offensive catcher. He walks a ton. Me and Jake, that's like the one thing that I know both of us really look for, especially in a young hitter. If you're able to be patient, you are really good. Isaiah talked earlier in the podcast about lineup protection. I'm pretty sure Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, pretty good lineup protection for Logan O'Hoppe. Catchers also tend to get favored pretty heavily in terms of defensive metrics. He's not the best defender, but he's not a bad one. He's posted pretty good numbers. Last year, he did really well. He walked more than he struck out in AA with the Phillies. It wasn't as close with the Angels, but he still walked like 13% of the time. He's very young. He is 22 years old. He had 100 plus plate appearances at AA. 275. So he had a 275 plus average. Walked over 10% of the time, and when he was with the Angels in AA last year, he walked 22% of the time. That's pretty good.
Bonkers.
Yeah, just ridiculous. Posted over 125 WRC plus and over a 200 plus ISO. So he hits for some power. He's more of got gap power. He only is like a kind of a 15 home run kind of guy. But if he can get into that power a little bit more, because he very clearly has it, I think he'll be the starting catcher for a team that is most likely going to be on borderline of the playoffs. He's got a lot of lineup protection. I really like Logan O'Hoppe here just because Yoshida, I knew Jake was probably going to pick Yoshida, so I don't want to pick the same thing because we do that too much. And then I'm not as high on someone like Gordon or on Gunnar Henderson because, I mean, the only people on that lineup really protecting him are like Mountcastle and Rutschman. And that lineup is just bad in a division that is good, so they don't need to pitch to him. So I think he'll walk a lot, and I think he won't put up the numbers that he probably should put up just because they also changed the parameters in Camden Yards where they kind of just decided that right-handed pull hitters, yeah, you're getting in the garbage. So I'm not a big fan of that pick. I think O'Hoppe just has a good chance to be a starter and play a lot on a team that will need him to play a lot and be good. So, yeah, I wanted to go with the more off-the-beaten-path pick.
Yeah, Davis, the Logan O'Hoppe hype man. Ray, as a matter of fact, agrees with Devin, saying that he's got Gunnar Henderson winning the award and becoming one of the best duos alongside Adley Rutschman in baseball. So we've finished the award section of this. So we'll now move on to the postseason where we're going to talk about our World Series predictions. Guys, we're supposed to be unbiased sports reporters. Isaiah and Devin did not do that. Devin, how could you choose both teams in the state that you are from?
Come on, Devin.
You know what? I'll tell you why.
Let's go.
I haven't been on this podcast since July. I have seen people ridicule the Yankees on this exact podcast.
I wonder who those people are.
Downright
Doesn't ring a bell to me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Disrespect the Cashman family, disrespect the Yankees franchise. But you know what? I had to have a little bit of fun with this one. I had to just get one homer pick. I didn't choose any Cy Youngs for the Yankees, any MLB, MVPs, Rookie of the Years, anything like that. So I just needed one, just one. And I needed the Yankees to do three things in the offseason. That's it. Three things. And I said, you're going to be the World Series favorites. You got to give Aaron Judge a blank check. I don't care what it is. Just get him back. I need Anthony Rizzo. I need my boy Anthony Rizzo back. I don't care what it takes. Just bring him back. I love what he brings to this team. We got him back. And the number one weakness that the Yankees had was that behind Garrett Cole, who's sort of been on this roller coaster ever since, the juices had to come off of the balls, he's just been struggling in Yankee Stadium for whatever it's worth. So I needed a pitcher to get behind Garrett Cole. Everyone thought that Frankie Montas was going to be the guy. He's not the guy, but we got Carlos Rondon. So the Yankees, they did what they did best, and they just spent big. They said, I don't care what it's going to take. Let's just spend our money and put ourselves back into championship status, make us contenders. So I love what they did. And then on the other side, I really like what the Mets did, unfortunately. So I think we're going all the way back to this 2000 World Series where the Yankees took it in 5 games. But you know what? I'll let the Mets have an additional game. I think the Yankees are going to take it in 6 games over a team that added Justin Verlander. They retained Edwin Diaz. They had a lot of other really promising moves in the offseason as well. But I think that one of these teams is going to get to the playoffs, or not the playoffs, just the World Series. And I think the Yankees and the Mets both have an equal shot.
Yeah, well, you're making one guy happy here. And it looks like it's Isaiah.
I buttered you up, Isaiah.
Yeah.
All right, Isaiah, take it from there.
The only problem I have with what Devin said is that he said it was a homer pick. No. It's a realistic pick. The Yankees are going to be in the World Series. Everything he said is correct, and they have a chance to have one of the most special pitching rotations in a long time. And that is not the bias in me speaking. Garrett Cole, I expect him to bounce back. He looked better at times, though he still had that implosion tendency, right? Especially in big moments. But you just said it. He has backup now. He has Carlos Rodon, who also has that tendency, and I'm a little worried. But you know what, Jake? You're the one that you blame yourself. You're the one that talked me into wanting Carlos Rodon on the Yankees. So this is your fault, okay? And then you got Nestor Cortez and a healthy Luis Severino coming back. And Frankie Montas did not look good last year at all. But let's see. Can he make a decent fifth piece of a rotation? I think so. So not only is that good for the the regular season, once we get to the postseason, you have 4 top pitchers. I do still think Luis Severino is a top pitcher. And then you have a great lineup still, and you're going to have the rookie of the year, like I said, with Anthony Volpe. And you have defense. You have Harrison Bader that you picked up, and he was a spark plug for us at times. I believe Giancarlo Stanton will be healthy, and he seems to just hit a home run in every single postseason game. Aaron Judge, you cannot keep struggling in the postseason. You just got paid $360 million. I need to see something from you. I think we're going to get all of that and more. The Yankees are going to be in the World Series.
Yeah, well, you didn't even talk about your NL pick, but that's okay because
No need.
Davis thinks they're going to be the ones to take it home. So, Davis, who do you have making and winning the World Series?
So I have the Astros playing the Padres, and I have the Padres winning in 7.
In the postseason.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. In the World Series. So the Astros are going to be better than the Yankees because they always are, regardless. They're still the best team in the AL, and I don't really know if it's all that close still. They lost Verlander, whatever. I still think the Astros are the best team in the AL. They're just so good, and they consistently develop talent. They return Brantley. They get Abreu, who is arguably better than Neil Gurriel at this point.
Arguably.
Well, yeah.
Clearly.
Christian Javier is also an AL Cy Young candidate in his own right. Framber Valdez, you could also make that conversation. Their rotation's excellent. Their bullpen's really good. Their lineup is as dangerous as it has ever been. But Padres, full season, gelling as a team. Manny Machado, Tatis, Soto. God, that lineup is just so good. Bogarts, too. It's tough to be like, let's look at the entirety of the NL and try to pick a better lineup because I don't think you can outside of maybe Philly. They're really good top to bottom. I talked about Yu Darvish. You got Blake Snell, Joe Musgrove. Their rotation's very good. I think Hader bounces back. The back end of their bullpen is very good. I think they're as good as any other team in the NL, if not the best. I do think they're the best because they're going to make the World Series. But I think just that lineup is going to overpower a relatively young rotation that the Astros have. And, huge upgrade. He played for the White Sox, bro. I just think the Padres lineup is so good. I think it overpowered the Astros. Very good rotation. They'd win in 7.
Yeah, I had a tough time not choosing the Padres myself, but I did have them in the World Series versus the Blue Jays last year, so I didn't really want to pick them again, although maybe that would have been a good bet, but that's fine because I didn't even have the National League winning the World Series this year. I've got the American League because I've got the Mariners versus the Braves in the World Series in 2023. I had the Braves go in there because they just do an incredible job of locking down all of the incredible talent on their team. So they've put together one of the strongest teams in all of baseball from top to bottom. Incredible bullpen, super deep lineup with young, exciting players and a great rotation. And I think they're just going to be hard to beat. They're just so loaded. But they will be beat in the World Series, as a matter of fact, by the Seattle Mariners, who I think this is finally their year. They've just built out one of the most complete teams in all of baseball. And I think it starts with the pitching staff, which I would consider the best in all of baseball. They have a super deep bullpen, not full of tons of guys that everybody really recognizes, but they're so good at turning out relievers. They're like the Rays of the West in that regard. And then they've got an incredible rotation headlined by the previously mentioned Luis Castillo and paired with Robbie Ray and Logan Gilbert and George Kirby, etc. Just an incredible pitching staff. And then that's backed up by a lineup that is spearheaded by Julio Rodriguez, one of the rising stars in all of baseball. And it doesn't stop there. You got Teoscar Hernandez, you got Ty France, and you've got others there propping up a team that's just going to roll through the entire season and really just have a ton of success in the postseason. I'm excited for 2023 to be the year of the Mariners. So we're moving on to the final section, the bold prediction section. I wouldn't say any of us were like super bold where it's like, what the heck was this guy thinking? But I still think we've got some solid picks. I'll leave my and Davis's pick for the end because I don't know how we chose the same thing. It's like we do a podcast or something together. I don't know. But I'll start with Isaiah because his is somewhat interesting. He's the only one that didn't go for like a team-centric one. He went for a player-centric one. Isaiah, what's your bold prediction for 2023?
Yeah, it's crazy that this is a bold prediction, but I did this for Davis. Okay.
I appreciate it.
Cody Bellinger took a 1-year deal to join the Chicago Cubs for no other reason. He's not going to win a World Series. He's not going to be in the postseason. He's there because he got a pretty good paycheck and because he has a chance to prove himself and revive himself. And I think his back is against the wall. Like, of course, he's still one of the best defensive outfielders in the game, but I think he also is going to return to that offensive form. He's going to hit at least 30 home runs, which, I think that's a fine season. If he can smack 30 home runs while delivering, great defense, he's going to command a pretty decent contract next season or make for a good trade piece for the Chicago Cubs. Mm-hmm. So, which more than likely that's what he'll be, right? If he does do anything decently good. But I do think he's going to come back, and it's just because like it's now or never. Like this is your opportunity, and I think he's going to do it.
Yeah, well, if you were making your pick for Davis, Devin made his pick in spite of Davis. Devin, what is your bold prediction for 2023?
Yeah, I don't know if it was too bold, but I also didn't think it was a safe take either. I have the St. Louis Cardinals to win over 100 games in the 2023 season. I think they're head and shoulders above everyone else in their division. I hate to break it to Davis, but I think it's a truth that Davis knows very, very well going into this season. The Cardinals had a very, very quiet offseason. If you think about it, the biggest name that they lost was Albert Pujols, which, I mean, I don't know how this guy revived his career in his final stint with the St. Louis Cardinals, but ended up batting .270 with 24 home runs and 68 RBIs to go with it. But then you look at the additions as well. Among them is Wilson Contreras, who I thought, filled in a huge void for them. He fills in a huge void for the offense itself. And so this would be the first time, if the Cardinals are able to accomplish this, the first time they're able to win 100 games since the 2015 season. That's 8 seasons back. I think they get Jack Flaherty back. He returns to the rotation this season. We're going to hope for the best for him. And after the All-Star break last season, the Cardinals sort of went on a run. They were 43-25 after the All-Star break. So if you carry that momentum over from the latter half of last season and you bring it into the 2023 season, I think they're in pretty good shape. I don't even know if 100 wins is enough of a hot take. They might just lead the entire National League, dare I say the entire MLB, in regular season wins by the end of this regular season.
There you go. That's a little bolder. Davis and I also made a prediction about the National League, so I guess none of us care about the American League. But Davis, you're really making me like you a lot with this pick. What's your bold prediction for 2023?
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I think the Dodgers are going to be kind of garbage this year. I don't think they're going to be garbage in the sense that they missed playoffs, but I think that they're going to be scrapping for a wild card. All they did was lose talent in their in their lineup, which was good last year, but not as good as I think everyone really expected them to be top to bottom. Their biggest addition is JD Martinez, who kind of lost a power stroke last year. He hit for high average, but the power just kind of evaporated. And that's a little bit of a concern for me. They lost Justin Turner, who was more or less the heart and soul, it felt like, of all their playoff teams anyway as well. So I really think the Padres have just gotten so much better than they have in this offseason that I really think on paper the Padres have a better team. So they'd run away with the division. And the Dodgers have pretty much, they've been like a lock, either first or second in that division for quite a while now, which will still stay the same. I just think you got to pencil them in second right now. They're going to have to scrap for a wild card. And I think the NL wild card is a lot stronger than the AL wild card picture at the current moment in time. So I don't think it's going to be as easy to a proposition that the Dodgers just walk into a playoff spot again this year.
Yeah, I seem to really be corrupting your brain, Davis.
Well,
My apologies.
they didn't add enough, and they lost too much. They lost Trey Turner and replaced it with JD Martinez, who's an upgraded DH. But I mean, you have to bank on good seasons from Gavin Lux and fill in spots like Bellinger, who, while he wasn't good last year, he still provided you a lot in that team. Their rotation is now going to feature like Urias and
Gonsolin.
They got
Tony,
Thor. They got Thor. They got a superhero.
They got Tony Gonsolin, who's a huge regression candidate. They got Syndergaard, who me and Jake have both established sucks. They have a fossilized Clayton Kershaw, who is still somehow being effective, but he's on an inning limit. They just don't let him throw that much anymore. The Dodgers are not nearly as good as they have been in the past. So, I mean, the Bucks got to stop somewhere. I think it's going to start to stop here.
Yeah, and I'm in complete agreement there. That was the exact thing I picked. I don't think either of us think the Dodgers will miss the playoffs. They're just barely going to make it. They're going to be like the last wild card team or something.
That's what I
think. Which is a big fall from grace considering what they've been for the last few years as like the best team in all of baseball by far. But like you said, they did lose a lot of talent. I'm really scared that their quiet off season was because they're prepared to give Shohei Ohtani $600 million next year or something,
Probably.
Which I might stop watching baseball if he goes to the Dodgers, to be honest. But I once I saw that, because I wrote my bold prediction and then I looked down to edit and Davis's was exactly the same. So I added on a little bit. I said Kershaw's going to be the one exception to the Dodgers fall from grace in that he sort of has a renaissance season. It's not like he's been bad the last few years, but he hasn't been, Hall of Fame level Kershaw. I could see him having just an incredible season, obviously with that limited number of innings. But if he's like 150 innings, I don't think he'll win Cy Young, but I think it's going to be like, oh, dang, everybody forgot how good Kershaw was. And this is going to remind everybody of how good he was at his peak. But yeah, the Dodgers really didn't do enough to continue their success going into this next year. And with that division getting tougher and the Padres looking like the big man in the division, I really could see the Dodgers taking a big step back. And since Ray's been here all podcasts, I'll show his bold prediction for the year. He's got Corbin Burns being dealt at the deadline by the Brewers, which would suggest that the Brewers are bad and they need to get something for Corbin Burns. It's a pretty big take. They would definitely get a big return there, but pretty crazy.
Yeah, two more to take on there. Brewers are going to be bad, and the Cardinals are going to win -4 games and be relegated like soccer style to AAA.
That would be like presents under the Christmas tree for Davis.
I'd throw a party and everyone be invited.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up our way too early 2023 predictions. Please make sure to go check out that article over at theathleteshub.org so that you can read our entire thoughts and also see what Matt Partridge had to think, what Matt Partridge takes were on all of these as well. It's going to be a really exciting 2023 season to see if we're right, but also it's just going to be exciting in general. We revisited our 2022 picks this off season. So we'll do that again next year. So stay tuned to the podcast in the off season next year if you want to see us revisit this and see how well we did. But do you guys have any other sort of notes about the 2023 season or your predictions before we close out this podcast?
I just wanted to say something because Dev said something earlier about the Dodgers that I wanted to respond to. It stuck with me and I just feel like I got to get off my chest. He said, when was the last? He said the Dodgers have been on top of the National League for like the past decade. I'm like, well, the past decade they've had super teams. They've had talent. They've been gaining talent for the past decade. To add to what Davis and Jake said, they lost talent, and there's actually holes in their lineup and in their rotation. And they lost Walker Buehler for the year to Tommy John surgery. This is going to be a year where they regress. I'm sure they'll be back next year, but I do believe they're going to regress as well.
Do you think that to sneak into the NL wild card based off of last year, the numbers show that you got to get 87 to 89 wins, right? So does anyone feel confident enough to say the Dodgers are going to win less than 90 games? That'll be the first time since 2012 if they win less than 90 games. You're nodding your head, Jake. Yeah, you think so?
Yes, I hate the Dodgers. Yeah.
I'd put
90
them.
games. That's
I
the
would
goal.
probably put them in the 88 to
Yeah.
86 category,
So
anywhere
wow.
from the 86 to 90 range. I think there's a strong chance. I think they might reach 90 games just because the Diamondbacks are still not good.
Look at
and
those. Yeah.
The Giants are a mixed bag, and the Rockies are capital A ass. So I would maybe they beat up on the Rockies enough to eclipse 90 games, but I don't know. I'm not very high on the Dodgers this year. I'm also not as high on the Cardinals as you for different reasons, but that's one thing. I do like Ray's bold prediction because I don't think the Brewers are going to be good. I think they just recently salvaged mostly a pretty terrible offseason where they didn't do anything. I don't think that the NL Central is as bad as everyone says. The Reds are terrible. The Pirates are encroaching upon being bad but fun. So they'll be probably more along the lines of like a 75 game winner this year. The Cubs are going to be middling around 500 is my guess. I think the Brewers are probably going to be closer to the Pirates level this year, and they'll probably end up trading off Corbin Burns for a haul.
Huh.
All right. Well, that was a pretty fun segment. Thank you guys for coming on. But before we say goodbye, we like to do this thing every episode where we bring in the closer, allowing some relief pitcher from the history of baseball to close out our podcast with a short biography of their team. So today I thought I would honor our two Yankees fans by choosing a former Yankee, a Yankee great. And today we've got Sparky Lyle closing out the podcast. Lyle had a 16-year career from 1967 to 1982, during which he played for the Red Sox, Yankees, Rangers, Phillies, and White Sox. His full name is Albert Walter Lyle, and he was also nicknamed The Count, as well as Sparky. He debuted in July of 1967 against the California Angels at the age of 22, where he pitched 2 innings with allowing 1 hit, no earned runs, a walk, and 3 strikeouts. He picked up a slider before he made that debut, which he learned to... He didn't get taught it from Ted Williams, but Ted Williams suggested that he learn one in the minors because he said that was the only pitch that he couldn't hit, even when he knew it was coming. And that became Lyle's signature pitch. And it led to immediate success with the Boston Red Sox in the late 60s. In 67, 8, and 9, he tossed 211 in a third innings combined with a 2.55 ERA and 33 saves, including a career high 93 strikeouts in 1969. He had 36 more saves across the next 2 seasons, 1971 and 1972, or 1970 and 1971, during which he pitched to a 3.38 ERA. Then he was traded to the New York Yankees prior to 1972, one of the very few trades between the AL East rivals. And he had one of the best seasons of his career in his first season in the Bronx. He had 107 and 2/3 innings pitched with a 1.92 ERA, a 1.05 WHIP, and a career high and American League leading 35 saves, as well as a Major League leading 56 games finished. Those 35 saves were the AL record and an MLB record for left-handed pitchers, which is pretty crazy to consider at this point in the annals of relief pitcher history. He finished 7th in AL Cy Young Award voting, but finished 3rd in AL MVP voting. So I don't know how he finished lower in Cy Young voting than he did in AL MVP, but this was the 70s. I don't think the voters knew what was going on then. The following year, he made his first All-Star team, so he got that national recognition carried over into the next year. He had 82 and a third innings that year with a 2.51 ERA, 27 saves, and a career best 1.02 WHIP. And he carried over that He carried over that success into another. It's on the mind. It's on the mind. Carried over that success into another incredible season in 1974, during which he tossed 114 innings with a 1.66 ERA and 15 more saves, finishing 25th in AL MVP voting that year. He took a slight setback in 1975 before he had another great year in 1976, where he tossed 103 and 2/3 innings with a 2.26 ERA and an American League leading 23 saves. He earned his second All-Star appearance, finished 22nd in AL MVP voting, and he set the AL career saves record. I think he was well over 150 by that point. And then 1977 is the year everyone will remember as what is probably considered to be the best year of his career. He tossed a career high 137 innings with a 2.17 ERA, 26 saves, and he led the American League with 72 games and 60 games finished. It was his third All-Star appearance of his career, and he won the American League Cy Young Award that year for his incredible success out of the bullpen. He finished 6th in AL MVP voting as well, and he set the career saves record for a left-handed pitcher. So he already had the AL career saves record, and he took over the record for career saves by a lefty. But in a weird turn of events, the Yankees wanted to improve at the closer position, which is hard to do when your closer just won the Cy Young Award. But instead, they acquired a young Richard Gossage, and moved Lyles into a middle relief / setup role, where Lyles started to struggle and his career started to take a downturn. He suffered a varicose vein flare-up in his pelvis area. I've had one or two of those in my day. And struggled slightly. I think that joke just went over everybody's head.
I wasn't sure you were serious. I was like,
but he struggled slightly that year, but then it really carried over when he left New York prior to the 1979 season, when he was traded to the Rangers. He was not the same after that. He wasn't too bad, but he wasn't also that great with the Rangers. He was traded to the Phillies halfway through the 1980 season, so he only spent around a year and a half with the Rangers, and then he played a full season with the Phillies in 1981, which was all red as well, but then he was traded to the White Sox halfway through the 1982 season before he retired after that year at the age of 37, finishing his career with 23.2 Baseball Reference WAR across 1,390 and a third innings pitched, complete with a 2.88 ERA, a 1.28 WHIP, and 238 saves, which is good for 40th all-time on the career saves leaderboard. I just realized I misspelled his name in the banner. It's Sparky Lyles. Do you guys have any takes? I know you guys weren't old enough to watch him while he played. Actually, it is Sparky Lyle. Why did I say that? Nonetheless, any comments on Sparky Lyle? Davis usually has some interesting take at the end of these.
I don't know if you have all seen a picture of Sparky Lyle, and if you're watching, you should Google what Sparky Lyle looks like, because he has an 80 grade mustache, and he still does as an old man. It's like a really sweet handlebar mustache. And the only way that they possibly could have improved their bullpen at that time was acquiring Goose Gossage and his excellent mustache as well. So 70s Yankees reliever mustaches, Yankees cornered the market. So there's that. I don't have a cool story this time. I wasn't able to find one about Sparky.
Yeah.
Yankees boys.
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of those weird instances as well where you somehow traded to the Yankees after 5 solid seasons with the Red Sox. So just one of those things that you could never see it happening now, but 70s were different, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at his stats. Like, he pitched more innings than some starting pitchers can do this year.
Yep.
And we talked about that year where he had 35 saves. I'll be honest, I'm just looking at the numbers now, and it's just very impressive. He was just consistent all around. I don't think saves were something like they were really aiming for at the time, because you look at all the innings he pitched and how consistent he was. He could have racked up quite a large number if that was like the goal, and that was the aim. So really nice. I'm honored that you picked Sparky Lyle, and I learned something too, because I didn't really know much about him. I'll be honest.
All right, yeah, I'm surprised he's not in the Hall of Fame. He was so good.
Did you mention too? I didn't hear if you mentioned this part too. The first American League reliever to win a Cy Young Award too.
Was he? Interesting.
Yeah, first. Yeah, it says right here on MLB.com, the first American League reliever to win a Cy Young Award in 1977.
Yeah,
crazy.
A couple more cool things. He will be eligible to be on the Classic Era Committee voting in 2025. It's kind of a travesty that he's not in the Hall of Fame already. Yeah. Also, another cool little fact, is the only thing I was able to find about him. He's one of the only relievers, especially way back then, never started a career game. So he was never a starter. A lot of times people, like, they'd be brought up as a starter, not work out, be moved to the bullpen. He was brought up as a reliever, stayed a reliever entire career, which is crazy because he still got to like almost 1,400 innings in his entire career.
That's why I had to check. I looked for that exact stat. I'm like, did he start? Was he a starter at one point? Because he threw a lot of innings back then. So yeah,
well, that's because you weren't a man if you didn't go out there and throw like four innings in relief and blow your arm out.
Yeah.
get revived on the field and still finish the game. And like,
Yeah, that one guy that got struck by lightning.
yeah.
Mhm.
What a guy.
Well, you guys have done it again. You've forced us into another marathon podcast. It seems like every time Devin is on here, we just can't help
help
ourselves from talking for 2 hours or more. So Davis, I'll let you take the reins back. Why don't you have these boys link themselves all over the place?
Plug some stuff, fellas.
Thank you. So
Yeah, I would say for me, just same old business as usual. Check out theathleteshub.org. Twitter is Devin Withers, just like it's read out, and then TAH for the Athletes Hub at the very end. But want to take a second as well. I mean, these guys, Isaiah said it best in our group chat. These guys are the model of consistency. This is episode 47. We're crawling towards number 50, but these guys are sprinting towards number 50 at this point. So just want to give a huge shout out to these guys. No personal plug. These guys deserve all the credit.
Devin's our boss. That means this is another week where we're not getting fired.
the thing is, it's not like they're just putting out episodes to put out episodes. Like Jake is coming with these like every single move, and that's what's special about this show for anybody watching. Like, if you know your team has made a move and you want to hear what people think about it, just come on this show, because small or big, it's going to get mentioned.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's I mean, I looked, I'm like 47. Holy crap. I just insane. So great job, guys. I mean, sheesh. So
Thank you. What's your Twitter, Isaiah?
Oh, it's Isaiah 2896. Now, I would be remiss, okay? I don't mean to, but I do have some breaking news, okay? Gary, Gary's one of the great human beings on this planet as well. And he has announced he is ready to return to the podcasting game. So look out for that on this channel as well.
Yeah, please check out the basketball podcast. See, like basketball, D-Tape System 3 is like our basketball counterpart.
There you go.
It's awesome. You like basketball, please.
Next Wednesday is what it looks like. Next Wednesday.
Ooh, let's go.
Back to back.
Packed hour to talk about sports with the boys.
I might just stay on it. I might just stay on for free baseball for doing it Wednesday as well.
Yeah.
Lose my voice. I'm ready. Let's do this.
But as always, make sure you follow Jake on all of his social medias. You can follow Jake Crumpler at Jake Crumpler on Twitter. That's crazy, I know. Make sure you go to his page at It's Jake Crumpler Baseball, right?
Just Crumpler Baseball.
Crumpler Baseball. Is it .org or .com?
.com.
CrumplerBaseball.com. Jake writes for Pitcher List. If you want to check out all of his stuff at Pitcher List, also check them out. Pitcher List. That website is really sick, especially if you love baseball and fantasy sports. Really awesome. Also write for Baseball HQ. Jake's he's the man. He pumps out baseball content at an otherworldly rate. He loves baseball.
He is baseball.
Yeah. If you want to win your fantasy league, like Devin did this last year.
It's true.
Because of Jake, make sure you check out all of his stuff. You can follow me on Twitter at DVSBert. It's on the screen. I post a lot of garbage and complain. But
It's an understatement.
I'm pretty agreeable to go along with. So if you want to look at the stuff I retweet and complain about, you can follow me there. And just as always, read our stuff at athleteshub.org or theathleteshub.org, and follow the Athletes Hub at Athletes Hub on Twitter. We kind of have a different space in the field of sports journalism because we're fans and we're trying to stay fans just like you. So if you want to read takes from real people about real opinions and real things that we're feeling and thinking, check us out there. It's really what we're doing. We're going to be back here every single Wednesday. Deep Takes and 3 is going to be on. Lots of stuff coming out from us. So just stick with us. Be part of the ride.